2019 Durango City Council meeting. We're happy to have you all here, and we're happy for those of you joining us live on DGov. As we start the meeting tonight, before we start, I just want to take one quick moment, a couple things. We have been here already since 3 o'clock today, and there's a lot of people in the room, so I want to just reiterate for public participation, if you will, that we are limiting comments to 3 minutes, just to run as efficient of a meeting as we can. And if someone has already stated something that you might be repeating, go ahead, it's okay to say that you agree with them. And if you would even like to come up in groups, if you know you're saying the same thing together, please feel free to have multiple people up at the podium at once. So with that, and before I start, I did want to also take one quick moment, very quickly, to just appreciate our city council team and our staff. I think some of you may have read my 6-month update in the Durango Herald this past weekend, and I will say that we have had a busy 6 months. We've worked hard, and we have accomplished a lot. And I would suggest that for this team in particular, it is our diverse and eclectic perspectives that we bring to the table that are advantagegeous and difficult all at the same time. So, but I want to thank everybody for their service, and I want to thank you for your passion, and I want to just take a moment to tell all you that, and I want to thank staff for working so hard with us and all of that. Thank you. Oh, and also one more thing. Councillor Bettine is going to be our timer tonight because he is in a very good position to be really clear when we hit our marks. So, and we'll give more information on that. But Ms. Phillips, may we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Councillor Baxter? Here. Councillor Bettine?
Here.
Councillor Noseworthy? Present. Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Here.
Mayor Youssef?
Here. Councillors, do we have any actual or perceived conflicts of interest this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to public participation. Thank you, Amber. When I call you forward, if you will please join us at the podium, speak your name and address clearly for the record. Councillor Bettine will keep time for us at 2.5 minutes. He will kindly wave his hand and let you know that your time is almost up. We're going to limit time again to 3 minutes. And one more thing. If there's several opportunities to speak tonight, including our public hearing for the budget. So just make sure you speak where it is, in fact, that you would like to. All right, Miss Katie Pellicore, please.
We're gonna go together so that it's the same time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Way to go.
Good example.
So, my name is Katie Pellicore, and I'm the Energy and Climate Organizer at San Juan Citizens Alliance, and we're located at 1309 East 3rd Avenue in Durango. We advocate for clean air, pure water, and healthy lands, and as part of that mission, we've been working with council and staff on setting and achieving strong renewable energy and carbon reduction goals. So to start, I just want to say thank you again to the council and staff for hearing us, for setting strong new greenhouse gas reductions and renewable energy goals. We really do appreciate all the hard work that both you and the staff have done to get the goals set, and we're excited to work with you on their implementation. So tonight I am here to talk about the implementation of those goals, and before I get into it, I just want to, if everyone could raise their hand or their sign and who's here to support those sustainability goals.
There they go. Very nice.
So Local First and San Juan Citizens Alliance met with Kevin and Imogen last week, and we were excited to learn that a working group is going to be formed to create a new climate plan with local stakeholders. And we really look forward to engaging on this and start working on concrete steps to achieve your new sustainability goals. However, to keep this from becoming another climate plan that's created and then shelved, we'd like to see the working group responsible for specific accountable deliverables, whether they're in the form of SMART goals or a detailed timeline of sustainability projects. We'd also ask that the working group eventually take on more responsibility and accountability and become an advisory board. While long-term and mid-term plans are necessary for systematic change, we hope that we can work with city staff to develop and immediately start on short-term projects to cut emissions and increase renewable energy. And to achieve those short-term goals, it is imperative that there is adequate funding reserved for sustainability projects in 2020 so that we can start making headway on that 2050 goal. To that end, we ask that a portion of the city's franchise agreement with LPA be set aside to achieve the goals determined by the working group. And at the very least, we ask that the 2020 budget includes how each item impacts the new sustainability goals and any standards for helping the city meet its goal. As I said in a letter I sent to all council members last September, a detailed process like this will clearly show what items in the budget will contribute to the new goals and allow the city to make progress immediately without waiting for new sources of funding. Thank you again for your time and your leadership in moving Durango towards a more sustainable future, and we are really excited to work with you on your goals.
And just for the record, my name is Monique DeGiorgio. I'm the Managing Director of Local First at 1309 East 3rd Ave, and I support everything that Katie and San Juan Citizens Alliance says, and we'd like to cede any extra time that the timekeeper has on the clock to Lissa Ray to tell you a little bit more about what the franchise agreement is and how that could be an appropriate funding source for this type of project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Jeff Berman, please.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for hearing our public input. My name is Jeff Berman. I live at 3029 East 5th Avenue in Durango. I develop solar power systems for residential, commercial, and municipal clients. I have a degree in electrical engineering. I spent 12 years on the Plot Electric Board of Directors working to integrate more clean energy onto our grid. And I am on the path to become a licensed professional engineer. I spend all my day working on developing solar power projects. And I can tell you, thank you for adopting a resolution to move us towards a cleaner city with your greenhouse gas resolution, 2 months ago? But I'm here tonight to tell you that you're missing your window of opportunity. There is a federal tax credit of 30% on solar power systems that on January 1st begins ratcheting down to 26%, 22% the year after that, and 0% the year after that. If we continue on the pace we've been on, looking at the potential for the city to reduce its costs by deploying solar power, we will miss that window entirely. We've been talking about this for years. If we do not have the city take the initiative to install solar power next year or at the latest the following year, it will not be very feasible at all because you will lose the advantage of that tax credit. Now, the city itself cannot take a tax credit, but a third party that buys the system and leases or sells the power back to you can. And that price is then reflected in the cost. That is how we put together a solar power project where without any money down, you can potentially begin saving on your power bills the day it's turned on with no upfront costs. This has not been considered that I can see. From what I understand, staff has been working on an energy services contract, which would include potentially a solar component amongst many other components. The problem with that is they take years to put together. I understand that maybe next spring we're going to see some of this come to fruition. I would ask that if the city council sees this not going to happen by next summer, our window to build these systems, that you remove that from an energy services contract and you put out requests for proposals on your own. Otherwise, you will miss that opportunity to put solar power on your buildings and reduce your costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sometimes the names are difficult for me to read. I'm going to suggest Han Riegel. Okay, completely. Huh? Harry, yes, thank you, yes. Harry.
My point's already been covered, so.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry about that. Sometimes it's hard.
Duly noted, yeah.
Thank you. Lissa Ray. Lissa Ray.
Kind of like
Telling you.
Melissa without.
Yes, it is like my, yeah, I should have gotten that one.
Right, it's like Melissa.
Yes.
So my name is Lissa Ray. I live at 543 East 30th Street in Durango. And thank you, Harry, for yielding your time to me. The Sierra Club's National Ready for 100 campaign inspires me to work on this campaign in Durango. As of today, 7 states plus DC and Puerto Rico have passed legislation and adopted ambitious policies mandating a transformation to 100% clean electricity. Colorado has not yet joined the ranks. Additionally, 12 counties and 141 cities have made a commitment to reach zero carbon emissions and/or reach 100% renewable energy. Thanks to this council's recent adoption of the resolution, Durango is now one of the 141 cities counted on that list. You are commended. Thank you so much. Grassroots demand has made 100% clean energy the movement it is. Thanks to the over 1,500 residents and 150 businesses that signed our petition, you made this happen. However, the movement can't stop here. Now comes the hard part, implementation. I've been studying implementation plans that Sierra Club has unveiled. Each is unique, but has common processes that can be scalable. We may need to hire a consultant to get it right. Rocky Mountain Institute, for instance, has lent their expertise to several of the RF 100 cities. Definitely required is a city manager that has experience in accomplishing sustainability goals and who views it as a priority. I'm going to reiterate the history of our Durango movement to remind all who are listening of our struggle with implementation. In 2008, countywide working groups were established to hash out the working parts of a plan, resulting in the 2011 Climate and Energy Action Plan. The Climate and Energy Action Plan, Harry yielded some of his time to me. Yes?
I guess so. He's smiling. We have a lot of people in the room.
We did this together. The Climate and Energy Action Plan now sits on the shelf collecting dust with a few other plans. 3 plans over 10 years later, we have little progress to show. And that's why, for the success of this resolution, I'm strongly suggesting that the council establish an advisory board to oversee the plan and its implementation until it's finished, slated for 2050. We cannot afford to fail in the fight against climate change. Speaking of affording things, the current budget allocation of $50,000 per year for 5 years, for the next 5 years, sets us up for yet another failure. Needed is a reliable source of funding, not subject to ups and downs and changes in personnel. The franchise agreement, the franchise fee that Monique yielded her time for me to talk about, is the perfect source for those funds. Everyone who pays an electric bill in the city is charged a monthly fee for their amount of electricity usage. You'll find this on your bill. This fee is to be used to pay for, this fee should be used. It is not currently used to pay for our energy transformation. Those fees go into the general fund currently. We cannot get to our goals without adequate and reliable funding commitments. $50,000 for all the sustainability goals is just not enough. I'm going to skip some of this. In pursuing an energy transformation, every person in the community must benefit from the new energy economy. The goal reaches beyond municipal facilities. Certain LPA directors continue to insist that renewable energy is only available to the rich. We intend to stomp out that belief and prove that they are dead wrong. LPA is a major player in this game and needs to have a seat on this advisory board. Likewise, city staff should have a say in how LPA may help in achieving the city's goals.
Okay, we're getting close, listen.
Okay, as the saying goes, it takes a village. So
Okay.
let's move forward and work together to make this goal come to fruition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Nice signs. I appreciate the signs. I am going to ask you guys, let's try not to lend people minutes because we have 22 people on this list. We really want to hear from everyone, and there may be more. So can we speak with Margaret, or hear from Margaret Cozine, please?
I'm here tonight to,
Name and address. Yes, please. Name and address for the record.
oh, I'm sorry, 401 County Road 142. I'm in the county. Margaret Cozine. I've been a librarian for over 28 years. I'm retired now. I've been in 2 countries as a librarian and many states. I was director at the Reed Library up at Fort Lewis College and Western State College as well. When I moved here and had my interview for that job, I interviewed the public library director to see if he was going to be the kind of person that I would be able to work with if I took the job. The Durango Public Library is an excellent library. It has struggled because of budget cuts they voluntarily took in 2008. They have a gifted director and excellent dedicated staff. I am in that library at least once a week myself and with my grandchildren another day. Last week, my daughter, who moved here in December, said, you know, I can't get to the library during the week. She works at home remotely. She said, I'm definitely going to go on Sunday. And I said, no, sorry, you can't go on Sunday. She said, what? I said, I know where you lived before, Pensacola, Florida. They were open every day of the week and until evenings until 9. I am so happy that the 2020 library budget has included an increase for the library at last. We don't serve all of our citizens well when we're not open longer hours and especially on Sundays. Many people in this community work more than one job and Sunday may be the only day they can get in. Many students are in activities that don't allow them to go except on Sunday. So I want to encourage the council to continue to support the library as I hear it is being supported in the current budget. The library is being loved to death. The staff is stretched. I don't know how they keep those smiles on their faces and are so welcoming all the time. We are the only library in our cohort that does not have Sunday hours, and we are the least supported financially in that cohort. So it's time to support our library. It's time. Sunday hours is just a piece of that. We need more staff. We built a brand new lead building, and we didn't staff it adequately. So I strongly encourage everyone here and everyone on the council to support the library. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire Atkinson.
Hi, my name is Claire Atkinson and I live at 900 Spruce Drive in Durango. I own local sustainable businesses, 2, Roll Solar Powered Electric Bike Rental, it's a delivery business, and Live Creative Studio. We provide strategic marketing and branding to purpose or sustainable businesses. I hold an MBA in sustainable business and my life's work has literally been to be a part of the effort so that business can be a part of the climate solution. I serve on the CRC, the Community Relations Commission, and back in business school too long ago, I was a part of a team that co-wrote the City of Berkeley's Sustainable Business Action Plan. I'm here tonight to talk about the role that sustainable business can play in solving climate. What does it have to do with climate change? Our global economy today is built on cheap fossil fuel energy, which has fueled a never-ending thirst for more and more energy to keep it going and growing. While many point their finger at business as the evil, I do not. I believe business must lead on climate. Climate change is not a matter of if, it's a matter of how bad. As citizens, we feel guilty and simultaneously responsible and powerless. But what if I told you that this doom and gloom story is a trap? What if I told you that the tools we need to build a carbon neutral future are already here? The conventional story we tell ourselves about climate change is that it's a problem of burning fuels for electricity and fuels for transportation. What that story misses is the fact that 1/3 of global emissions come from the chemistry of stuff. Everything you're wearing, everything you're sitting on, everything you touch. Think cement, think buildings, steel, again, think buildings, autos, plastic. Think about every product that's made on this planet, and it comes from some production of carbon. These are the big carbon emitters as a result of making these everyday things. But why? Carbon molecules, it turns out, we vilify them today, but they're the very building blocks of life itself. We have to turn our design thinking around and on its head. How can we build and create using the carbon that's in the atmosphere? What if we trap that excess carbon to make everyday things? What if we trap it inside this jacket? What if we trap it inside the chair that you're sitting on? What if we sequester carbon instead of release it into the atmosphere? This is not science fiction. It's happening right here, right now. Take Interface Carpet. It's that carpet company that has the squares that everybody loves. They just produced a carpet that sequesters carbon. Charlotte McCurdy, a Yale graduate and RISD graduate, she just made a raincoat from sequestered carbon. And what if I told you that actually art could clear the air and sequester carbon? This is not science fiction. This is happening right now in universities and institutions all around the world. But we don't know about it. Why? We're paralyzed with fear. Here I am today to talk to you and tell you that we have the technology right here, right now, to change how we make things.
Let's wrap it up.
Okay, I have 3 things that the council can help us do, and I'll say them briefly. 1, support sustainable business innovation in Durango through the creation of a plan to incubate, retain, and attract sustainable businesses. We have over 40 of them already working on carbon reduction. It's time we own it and learn from them. And 2, partner with SCAPE, Fort Lewis College Business School, and the new Center for Innovation to collaborate to bringing these technologies here to our community and create businesses. And 3rd, establish a sustainability commission comprised of public citizens to deepen the city's sustainability goals. It's time to take bold and positive action. Durango is the place to do this. And through a sustainability plan that's climate neutral, sustainable business innovation and incubation can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dan Snowberger.
I think Dan, stand here.
Oh, Sweetie Marbury. Sorry.
That's all right.
Is Dan not?
My name is Sweetie Marbury, and I live at 2256 West 2nd Avenue.
Excuse me, sweetie, are you speaking for Dan?
No, he's not.
Yes,
Oh,
I will
you
be
are?
for both, but first for me and then for Dan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, I came tonight to urge the City Council to complete the Animas River Trail North by funding the bridge over the river and also over the railroad track. This long plan that I'm aware of has been in the works since 2011 and was approved by 3 different city councils to protect pedestrians and children on bikes, families with dogs, from interaction with cars on 32nd Street, which is the second busiest street in Durango. The existing 5-foot sidewalk on the existing bridge at 32nd Street is just not acceptable to carry the increased volume over the Animas River Trail north once it opens up. We all know that young children can be impulsive and make very poor choices. I've been at the 32nd Street Bridge on Sundays, and this is what I have observed. I've observed children on bicycles not using the blinking yellow light. I've observed cars going through a blinking yellow light. This is really just common sense. The city has received money from GOCO, and why would you turn back money for the Animas River Trail North by not funding the bridges? The Parks and Rec boards, the multimodal boards have supported the funding of the bridges to protect pedestrians. You said you wanted input from your boards. Please listen to the boards. We're at the finish line for this project. It started almost 10 years ago, and I'm urging you to fund the bridges, and parents will thank you. I'm also speaking for Dan Snowberger. He's at a school board meeting tonight. This is on the Animas River Trail. I regret that I am unable to be present this evening to weigh in on a conversation regarding the Animas River Trail project on the north side of town. It is my understanding that there have been 2 additional pedestrian bridges planned for this area since 2011. I have a particular concern in the area around North City Market, where I see students cross the street and often fail to use the signals that exist. I would encourage the city to continue to support funding the project as designed to provide safe crossings of the Animas River as part of the Animas River Trail to ensure the safety of our children and members of our community. Our children have many opportunities to take walking field trips in a town with so many opportunities for experiential learning in our amazing town. I recognize that individuals who may not have children may not see the value in such crossings. Again, I encourage the council to maintain the plan that has been supported by many past councils in the completion of this amazing trail and the 2 additional bridges as an asset to our community. Dan Snowberger, Superintendent of Durango School District 9R. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Susan Atkinson.
Thank you. Susan Atkinson, 2208 Crestview Drive, Durango, Colorado. So I am advocating for solar panels on the city buildings, and you may know that Cortez already has 3 city buildings with solar panels: their city hall, their rec center, and their sanitation sewer lift station. And they say that their motives for having solar is that it cuts costs, it makes the district more environmentally friendly, and it's the right thing to do. I'd like to add one additional motive that I see for us in installing solar panels, which would be influence. We influence other businesses, we influence individuals, and there's a huge amount of people who come to Durango, especially to our rec center, from other towns. So we get the opportunity to influence a lot of people by having solar panels. So I encourage you to fund and support that. And the other note that I saw was that Shaw Solar actually, Cortez installed their solar panels at no cost. Shaw Solar installed them, and that the city pays a 5% lower fee than their current electric bill. I think it's amazing that they were able to set that up. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Page.
Hi, I'm Susan Page, 491 Mesa View Road. I'm here to talk about 5G technology. I know permits are already being applied for 5G, and wireless technology has never been tested for long-term safety, and scientists from all over the world are calling for a moratorium on 5G, citing human health effects and impacts to wildlife. Current scientific evidence supports the conclusion that mobile phone and Wi-Fi is cancer-causing. So 5G is going to utilize both 3G and 4G, thus creating even more radiation, which will affect us. And back in 2004, a study found neurological damage in firefighters who had antennas on their stations So we know that it's very bad for health, not only for humans, but for plants, animals, wildlife, for all life on Earth. 5G was developed by the military as a weapon for crowd control. It creates severe burning sensations on the skin, which causes crowds to disperse. It will also provide surveillance worldwide with no privacy. At least 20,000 satellites will be radiating the Earth 24/7, and not 1 inch of the globe will be free of radiation. 5G electromagnetic waves are so powerful they travel through brick, stone, and cement. So what's going to happen when they travel through the human body? There are no safe levels for this kind of technology. There is an alternative, which is fiber optic, which is faster. They claim 5G is fast. Fiber optic is faster, it's safer, it's more reliable, more cyber secure, ensures more privacy, and produces no radiation, so there's no health hazard. And the small cell towers, which they claim are small, have refrigerator-sized cabinets, which they're going to be placing in people's yards, devaluing their property, and their children and pets will be playing right there, being radiated by them. And I think aesthetically, our towns and neighborhoods will go down the drains. And just to be radiated 24/7, you know, who in the world would want that? You know, it just doesn't make sense. So thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick moment. Councillor Brookie wants to just give just a very brief update.
But I didn't want to lose the opportunity with all the climate folks in the room to announce I'm going to be speaking and talking about what a few of the things the city has done and will be doing in the future at a climate symposium. And Kirby, I'll ask you to give us the date and time. This Saturday, and I hope you all can come. We'll have a little bit of update on what we are currently doing. I'll show you the facilities in Durango that do have solar collectors on them already, and have for a number of years now. But and talk about a few of these things that have been brought up this afternoon, and look forward to a really good exchange. And the other speakers are way better than me, but I've got 5 minutes, and our new LPEA director is going to be there too. I think I'm really looking forward to listening to her as well to talk about this partnership that you've described. So, Kirby, what time and location?
Saturday at the Durango Public Library from 3 to 5 p.m. Please come look at the paths Durango can take to 100% of
Great.
Thank you. Sorry for that interruption. Just
Okay.
didn't want to lose this crowd. So.
Okay, thank you. Kate Isnay.
Well, I think you meant me. I apologize. I thought that was a sign-up sheet. I'm here for the Theater Month proclamation.
Oh, great. Okay. Okay. That's great. Ellen Stein.
There. Hi, my name is Ellen Stein. I'm speaking tonight as a 14-year resident of Durango's Animas City neighborhood at 3314 East 4th Avenue, 1 block north and 1 block east of the 32nd Street put-in. I use 32nd Street every day, either on foot, bike, or car. I'm also a member of the Multimodal Advisory Board, an avid cyclist and recreationist like many in this room. I'm here tonight because I'm concerned about this council's commitment to the recreation lifestyle that brought many of us here, that largely defines our town and much of our tourism and recreation-based economy. As I've stated previously, I'm concerned about this council's support of the 32nd Street Bridge project that continues to remain in question or adamantly opposed by at least a few councilors, despite near unanimous support of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board and unanimous support of the Multimodal Advisory Board. Our newest councilors and our mayor recently reiterated in her column in the Herald last weekend, expressed interest in rebuilding trust with residents, some of whom said they didn't feel heard or represented. Mayor Youssef said she feels proud of what council has accomplished, prioritizing transparency and many opportunities for input. I'm here tonight to simply say I do not feel heard or represented, nor do I believe our advisory board members feel heard or represented, nor does the public, who voted 70% in favor of renewing the 2015 half-cent sales tax for parks, open space, trails, recreation, and multimodal projects. Particularly because today, council spent part of today's study session discussing reducing by $2.3 million the amount of funding that goes to new project to pay for park maintenance instead. This discussion, which I believe was only posted publicly yesterday, had no staff input, advisory board, or public discussion, and is anything but transparent. It has significant implications for the projects planned and approved in the Parks and Rec Strategic Plan 2019 to 2023 and projects long planned and in process like the 32nd Street Bridge project. Implications that are not at all understood because staff has not yet been asked to provide input on what a reduction of this degree means to the projects underway and yet to be proposed that are community priorities and require matching funds for grants. I implore you to seek staff input and schedule public discussion of this proposed reduction before passing any new policy. In your haste to address the general fund imbalance, a critical endeavor for which you are establishing a new committee to begin to address, I fear you are moving too quickly and losing sight of what defines Durango and is really the spirit of our community, a commitment to our cycling culture, past and future, conservation and recreation values, something Great Outdoors Colorado has recognized us for as a model to follow for other Colorado communities. Continued investment in this infrastructure, especially completion of the long-planned 32nd Street Bridge, is critical. Please budget the $3.4 million for the project, $500,000 of which is paid for by GOCO, to ensure the safety of all citizens, my neighbors, their children, dogs, grandparents, and other users. These projects are expensive. Main Avenue Underpass, I'm almost done, cost $2.4 million in 2006. Smart 160 to Art Underpass is estimated at $6.3 million. Home Depot to the Sail Barn Trailhead. Camino del Rio Underpass is estimated to cost $4.3 million. As we look forward to celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Iron Horse Bicycle Classic in 2020, do not compromise the vision of the Animas River Trail, envisioned from its inception with no at-grade crossing and further congest the second busiest street in Durango. Thank you. Thanks.
Sandy Burke.
I'm Sandy Burke. I live at 863 East College Drive. I thought I was coming here to address the proposed $500,000 transfer of funds to the general fund from the 2005 quarter-cent recreation tax. But I've just heard that the council instead seems to be favoring some sort of random, arbitrary transfer of a percentage of funds. After 18 years on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board and heading up the 2015 tax effort, it is abundantly clear to me that the citizens here see the 05 and 2015 revenue streams as a means to provide open space, create trails and parks, as well as pay for new capital improvements, repairs, and maintenance of existing amenities, especially upgrading the Animas River Trail. A huge amount of time, energy, public input, and agonizing decisions by staff and the Parks and Rec Board have gone into balancing how to allocate these tax revenues, which does not include a transfer of additional amounts to the general fund. You need to respect these efforts. The idea of rating these tax funds for a set percentage yearly with no public input or staff input is outrageous and totally inconsistent with the needs and desires of our community. What next? 40%? 50%? All of it? When 70% of our citizens voted just a few years ago for 25 more years of dedicated recreation taxes, they were not voting to arbitrarily allot a certain percentage, 20 or 25 or whatever, to the general fund with no real logic or explanation. This is not appropriate after these taxes were approved based on clear citizen priorities. You are obligated to honor the wishes of the citizens you represent by responding honestly, with integrity, and transparency to the desires of our community by continuing with the current methods of allocation of these funds at this time, not suddenly implementing a totally different policy with no public process or in-depth evaluation by city departments. You will have no way of knowing what unintended consequences this will be, especially given we do not have a city manager or financial director, only interims. If you believe this is a good approach, start studying it. Include the public, the city staff, and the new city manager and finance director when they are hired. This is an approach that could not possibly be decided in a few days or weeks. What about all this transparency and thoroughness that we hear about? In conclusion, do not try to balance the general fund with funds from the dedicated recreation tax. Do not embrace a half-formed concept without any public input or staff input. In addition, I totally advocate restoring funding to the 32nd Street Bridge for the safety of the community. Lost lives are not worth a few $1 million. Thank you.
Deborah Schisler.
Can I encourage everyone to stay within the 3-minute time frame, and when Councilor Bettine raises its hand, you have 30 seconds to wrap it up. Just wanting to be respectful of all the people here in the room and of my colleagues. Thank you.
My name is Deborah Schisler. I live at 3342 County Road 222. I'm here today to talk about the 5G small cell. The installation of 5G small cells will not make the technology that we love dearly any safer. Federal Communications Commission guidelines, not standards, which are more stringent, were set up in 1996 and are still in effect today. They are based on engineering needs and do not consider biological effects. When the FCC wanted to determine whether cell phones were safe, they used a 200-pound anthropomorphic male, a mannequin filled with 2/3 fluid, and a cell phone held to its ear for 6 minutes. When the dummy tested no thermal heating effects, the FCC determined them safe. Today, real humans use bigger, more powerful devices they carry around all day long close to their bodies. They use multiple devices with different frequencies simultaneously. Wi-Fi is left on 24/7 in homes, work, and school, in addition to a transmitter on the gas meters and 2 on each smart meter, never giving their own electrical systems and that of their children a rest. All while under the same 1996 guidelines. Our lawmakers continue to listen to the telecommunications industry and not the concerns of their constituents. In 2012, Congress was unable to pass the Cell Phone Right to Know Act, preventing people from knowing up front simple ways to keep themselves safe. Now, a new, different, untested frequency, millimeter waves, is about to be introduced, adding to the already existing frequencies. However, this time, we, the people, have had enough. A few months ago, New Hampshire passed a bill that will set up a 5G commission to study the health impacts of 5G. No 5G small cell will be installed until health impacts are known. Last week, New York State introduced a similar bill. Oregon, Montana, and Louisiana have all moved to take action where wireless is concerned. The island of Maui is establishing a 5G panel comprised of renowned experts that will be televised with the intent of making a well-informed decision. Okay. And this is the most important part. People's Initiative is suing the FCC and the Telecom Act, represented by a law firm in New York and Aaron Brockovich's firm in California. These firms do not handle cases they might lose. Could this ultimately place the city of Durango at financial risks should these lawsuits prevail? We care about our health in Durango. Why not place this on hold and establish a local 5G commission?
Thank you.
Let's implement the precautionary principle for all of us.
Thank you. Dan Hunt.
Dan Hunt, 288 Animas View Drive, number 7. September 21st, 1962, President Kennedy said, "We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept when we are unwilling to postpone and one which we intend to win." He did not know how the goal would be reached, nor later than it had been. I'm disappointed that the environmental goals set by this council were not stronger. Without strong goals, strong results are harder to obtain. Standards drop by telling others that you do not believe more can be done. Think outside your box and join me in mine and others. Some thoughts, and I'll skip any that other people have already mentioned. The Ute Mountain Ute Tribe in Toyoak has a 1.1 megawatt solar system under construction. behind the meter with a $1 million grant from USDA. They used volunteers, hopefully to reduce costs as well, and they had paid staff as well. Why don't we have a carbon offset program to benefit local projects? People in the community are talking about this. What would it take to make it happen? What manufacturers or distributors would be willing to donate or reduce purchase costs? How much solar at what cost would need to be installed to make the process self-replicating? Think of this like compound interest. Use the savings from the first install to pay for the second, and those two for the third, and so on. There are groups like the Community Foundation and First Southwest Bank that have attracted donations with the express purpose of cycling them through the community as a loan, often at low interest rates. I'm not saying that this is easy, and I'm not saying timelines will be met. It takes serious planning and commitment, but a strong, permanent citizen advisory board put the process in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn Braziz.
I'm going to join in the comments of others who are urging the city to work hard towards its goal of reaching 100% renewable energy and actually accelerating those goals.
Thank you, Lynn. Routledge, please. If I said that.
Thank you. Routledge, 746 East 7th Avenue. I want to speak about climate. I am running for the United States Congress. We are out of time. The climate is rapidly destabilizing, and we need a response of the scale and urgency that the problem faces us. I've been a climate activist, a visible climate activist in this community since 2007 when I took on the retired Exxon scientist and executive in our community who was putting out climate denial stuff for ages. I was on Dick White's science, technology and analysis working group with the Climate, Energy and Action Plan under 4 Corps in 2010. That's almost 10 years ago now, for the 2 years of that. We did an enormous amount of work. We had maybe 40 actions proposed. We collected lots of data and so forth. I encourage the town to use that as a benchmark for whatever it does moving forward. For the big picture, I support, regarding climate, House Bill H.R. 763, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, supported by Citizens Climate Lobby, and also House Resolution 109, the Green New Deal, which in the essence for everybody of the Green New Deal, whether it's in the House or the Senate, is to take a system-wide perspective and response in line with the urgency and the scope of the problem. So what I want to do, should I be your congressional representative, I'm leading on climate. All of my material focuses on climate, and I'm the only candidate of the 4 Democratic candidates at this point that has any strategic focus on climate whatsoever. And if I'm the nominee that takes on climate denier Scott Tipton, I will be in Congress. And I will be, in particular, I'm a scientifically educated systems engineer. I have a PhD in industrial engineering, and I like system problems. And so what I want to do is support those bills that are existing, but help go and flesh out this vision of the Green New Deal, because it's a system-wide perspective with a just transition. And so that's where I can contribute. And in particular, I'll be interested in, as a system-wide perspective, in what local communities are doing and what they need and how I can help from Washington throughout the 29 counties in our district. I have lots of flyers here if anybody's interested.
Thank you. Ellis McNichol.
Am I good to go? Should I-
1 second.
Sorry.
Right, Ellis, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, good. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Ellis McNichol. I am at 728 East 6th Avenue. I am 20 years old. I'm a student at Fort Lewis College, and I am here on behalf of my future generations, and entire ecosystems and species that cannot speak for themselves in this room today. My presence is informed in part by the 2018 IPCC report, which states that we have 10 years, 1 decade, starting in 2020, to prevent a global temperature rise of above 1.5 degrees. And if we continue as business as usual, we will most likely experience a global temperature rise of 3.7 degrees or more. And while I appreciate your current commitments and goals, we are simply running out of time. Your actions, or we have to speak today, not tomorrow. We have to act today, not tomorrow. Your actions and choices will speak beyond these chambers. Each of you holds the power and responsibility to influence. We have the energy, heart, technology, and dedication in this small, beautiful town to make meaningful change and contribute to the larger role that we have in this society. I'd like to end on a quote of Edward Abbey, keep it short and sweet. Sentiment without action is the ruins of the soul. And while I appreciate truly and deeply with every part of myself your sentiment here today and what you're trying to do, it's simply not enough. We must act now. The world and future generations are watching you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Miss Amber Henry. Sorry about that.
Here is a testimony from someone who couldn't be here tonight. So there's 5 of those, one for each counselor. My name is Amber Henry. I am a Durango resident. And many of you know my story, but for those of you who don't, 3 years ago, a telecom company installed a 4G tower 500 yards from my house in Parker, Colorado. I didn't know what it was, but I assumed it was safe. I assumed that the government would not allow the installation of something that could harm me and my children in the middle of a neighborhood near homes, parks, and schools. 6 months later, my children and I became ill with a life-threatening systemic infection due to the immunosuppressive effects of high radiation exposure. We also developed a condition known as electromagnetic sensitivity, or EMS, which is recognized as a disability by the ADA. The installation of this tower forever changed our lives. If it can happen to me, it can happen to you. New towers and antennas are going up around town at blinding speed, ever closer to homes, schools, and businesses. I have taken measurements of the radiation coming off of these towers, and it far exceeds the amount shown by the 2012 BioInitiative report and other independent studies to cause cancer and permanent biological effects. In 2011, the World Health Organization designated wireless radiation as a Class 2B carcinogen, the same category as lead, asbestos, and DDT. A recent decade-long study by the U.S. National Toxicology Program concluded that these frequencies at levels far below FCC guidelines are, quote, clearly linked to cancer. Thousands of doctors and scientists are now calling for wireless, also known as microwave radiation, to be reclassified as a Class 1 carcinogen. The effects of these frequencies have not been studied on humans, children, and pregnant women, or the environment. We are the experiment. These towers and antennas do not belong anywhere near where people live, work, and play, and yet the industry is now applying for even more close proximity towers. One recent application for a tower is less than a few hundred feet from St. Columba School and less than 25 feet from someone's home. While the Telecom Act of '96 preempts communities from refusing these towers on the basis of health, communities around the world are fighting back. We must speak out to protect our right to life and liberty and our freedom to choose whether or not we are exposed to this radiation. We must speak out on behalf of the children and the vulnerable, for those who cannot speak out, and this includes wildlife, birds, bees, trees, and other beings who rely on electromagnetic frequencies to navigate and to live. We must speak out against the folly that is blasting the atmosphere with microwave radiation on a warming planet. And yes, your microwave also operates at 2.4 gigahertz.
Not to mention wireless tech uses up to 10 times more energy than wired, and no discussion on the environment is complete without a thorough investigation of this topic. I'm asking the city to place an emergency moratorium on the installation and approval of any more tower applications until this technology is proven safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask if that's the same letter that you sent to us? Is there anything substantively different?
I didn't send anything to you.
That sounds awfully,
She spoke earlier in the year.
okay.
Previously in the year. No.
Okay, Joshua Statson.
The closing window for the federal opportunities in solar power is what I was going to cover.
Thank you very much. All right, I believe that concludes our public participation. What? Is there a second page? Oh, wow.
There's public hearing.
Isn't this fun? Thank you.
Yeah.
Is it too full page?
This is the budget hearing, so, but it's fine. They signed up on this, so just ask if they want to speak at the budget hearing or if it's public.
What is the other one?
That's the ordinance for the appropriation.
Okay. So this is actually a sign up for the public hearing, but if there's anyone on this sign that would like to speak during public participation?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can go together.
Okay. Okay, Janet and Andy.
My glasses on to read your thing.
Okay, no problem, no problem. We're happy to have you.
Janet Wiley.
And Andy Cora, and we're at 312 Fiesta Circle in Durango. Okay. So I just want to, we won't even take the full time. I want to concur with what Sweetie Marbury said, what Dan Snowberger said, Ellen Stein, and especially what Sandy said as well. 20 years ago when I came to this town, 30 years ago, 38 years ago when I came to this town, you couldn't go north to south on a bicycle. So part of the Green Initiative is getting people off the roads and on the trails. There's been a vision that's been taking place for over 20 years in this town, and it's the Animas River Trail. It's the crown jewel, I think people would say. The original piece of the Animas River Trail, and it's still original, and that's okay, but it's behind the fire station there. That's the original trail piece right there. And yeah, it needs to be repaved, no doubt, but it's a connection, and those connections are super important. And now this vision has been going on for 20 years, and we spent a lot of money on this new north section up to Oxbow, which is beautiful, and there's a beautiful bird, preserve up there and a big hiking trail, and it's going to get nothing but busier on that north end. It goes right behind our house. And I'm concerned that the council is now looking to come in and change this vision so they not fund a connection. Because if we don't fund it now, we probably never will. It's not going to get any cheaper. Yeah, it's an expensive piece. Just like going under Main Street was expensive, just like the bridge behind Harley-Davidson was expensive. These are all expensive pieces. I get it. But this is the main stem of our trail. This is it. This is a connection that's going to link the north end to the south end. And if we abandon that now, we're basically, you're saying, you're coming into council and not listening to staff, 20 years of meetings, not listening to the citizens, and saying, you know what? We know better. We're not going to make it a continuous trail from north to south. And there's a lot of concern about this in this community. And it's not, there's a lot of undercurrent of concern with this new city council and the direction they're taking. And I really love this town. And I think it's really important that we follow through on our commitments. So it's up to you guys to do that. And I really encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. I bet Mike Freeman wants to speak now. Freeburn, sorry. Okay. You all want to? You do too, Lori?
Yeah.
Not during the public hearing?
I thought I was.
You can just do it. We'll just do it now.
Yeah, I'm on that as well.
Okay.
Hello, good evening.
Hi.
I'm going to help you out. I have a little device here that's going to keep track of my time. I get 2 minutes?
Sure.
Is that right?
Sure, two's great.
3. So I'm
really
Mike
get
Freeburn. I live at 16 Delwood Place. Been in Durango since 85 and active community member since then. I'm about to retire from a lengthy career in education, and in my final year of that, current school principal. And I spoke the last time I was here. I told the story, Dean, you weren't present. I was sad not to see you. Dean's son was in my class many years ago in chemistry, and what a great guy. Please send my hello.
I absolutely will.
To Drew. And so, but in any case, I told a brief story about seeing a little girl run over at 32nd Street. And Dean wasn't here to hear that story. It left an impact. You know, when you see an 8-year-old girl hit by a car, I didn't actually see the collision, but I arrived seconds later. And I told the story about how I would walk across that street, and this was before there was a flashing light and so forth. When I lived there, I live in the center of town now for the last 20 years. But in any case, since then, since I spoke with you, I had an opportunity to speak with quite a few kids about this intersection, and I asked them, "What's it like?" Because I don't cross that intersection anymore on foot very often. Occasionally on a bicycle. Most of the time, I'm in a kayak going under the bridge. So I asked, what's it like? And every student that I talked to told me the same story who passes through there. They say, it's sketchy, it's dangerous, it's scary. And I heard that from every student I talked to who goes through there. And so for me, that just said it all. And, you know, several people have already spoke to this issue and talked about, I mean, you know, people are going to die in this intersection if this bridge isn't built, and it's most likely going to be kids. Let's just face it. Everything's in line, the funding is there, the planning has been done, the community input has been made for the last many years, and it would really be a shame if this commitment was not followed through with, in my opinion, as a longtime Durango citizen. So I would encourage you to build the bridge, and build it as soon as possible. So as soon as the north side of the trail is open, and all the people will be coming on the trail, spilling out to go check out the new north part of the trail, well, I know it's not going to line up exactly calendar-wise, but that eventually they'll have a safe way to cross. Please build the last section of the trail and make it continuous for the kids of this community. 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Freeman. Lori Dixon, let's just go from the top.
Thank you. Sorry, the sign-up sheets were a little...
No problem, sorry. We'll make that more clear going forward.
Yeah. I'm Laurie Dixon. I'm the Executive Director of Four Corners Office for Resource Efficiency, and I'm representing the organization at 835 East 2nd Avenue. 2008, Climate and Energy Action Plan. It's already been mentioned by Lissa tonight. 2011, it was passed. And it took 3 years of 3 different entities, well, 9 different, but La Plata County, the city of Durango, and the town of Ignacio. And just briefly to read a little bit about what that was. I also wanted to make a note, you know, in reading the 2015 Sustainability Action Plan for the city, 25% on-site renewable energy. It was never met. So the important point to remember is we have plans like this in place with greenhouse gas reductions, but they haven't been implemented. For example, the recommended greenhouse gas emission reduction target is to reduce emissions 80% from the 2005 levels by 2050, with incremental reductions targets in the interim, and there's a table. Proposed actions to reduce emissions, they're in here. They tell you how. They did a very specific analysis, tables. This is a 76-page document. I would recommend you revisit work that was incredibly intensive and a lot of study and a lot of hours from the city and the county went into this plan. And it's a good starting point, but reinventing a plan every time is a waste of taxpayer monies. So I'd be happy to share this document with you. I have it as a PDF file, and I'm happy to send it to anybody that's interested.
Thank you.
Lori, may I ask one question? You mentioned the 25% on-site renewable. Is that in this document? Or?
No, it was in the city's sustainability action plan.
Thank you.
Yeah. They have recommendations on everything from just the oil and gas reduction to, it's pretty thorough, and it's definitely worth reading, so.
Thanks. Okay. Dylan Malusha? Did I pronounce that terribly wrong?
Everybody does. My name is Dylan Maleska.
Okay.
I live at 525 Animas View Drive. And I wanted to thank the council members for your time. And to start, I'd like to sincerely thank our interim city manager, Amber Blake, for stepping up during our time of transition and dealing with what I'm sure is a substantial workload. And I'll keep mine short. According to the goals adopted by City Council on September 3rd, 2019, you've set a goal to improve underfunded amenities, including the Durango Public Library. The library, which has proven to be a well-used resource by our community, saw over 400,000 visits in 2017, and according to your own goals, is currently operating in an underfunded state. With consistent requests by citizens of the city and county to open on Sundays, I ask that you, as members of City Council, follow goals you set for yourself and approve the proposed budget for the library to open the extra day and approve their employee compensation plan. The materials, resources, and information they provide to all who enter should be viewed as a vital commodity to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Whiteman.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Whiteman. I'm a Durango resident, 187 Sierra Vista Street in Three Springs. I'm the chairman of the Natural Lands Preservation Board, and there's a memorandum that was submitted, I believe, already, but I'll provide another copy here on behalf of the board. This is in regard to the use of the post funds that was brought up earlier. And I believe there's going to be more discussion regarding the 2020 budget.
Yes, there will be more discussion.
Okay. May stick around for that if that's also a public process.
Yes, we will have a public hearing on the 2020.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. If it's okay, Madam Mayor, I'd like to read from the memorandum from the Natural Lands Preservation Advisory Board. To the Durango City Council, at the regular meeting of the Natural Lands Preservation Advisory Board on October 14th, 2019, the following board members were in attendance: Chair Steve Whiteman, Mark Smith, Adam Howell, and Ian Altman. City Councilor Kim Baxter was also in attendance at the council as the council liaison. There was extensive board discussion on the proposed 2020 expenditures in the Open Space, Parks, and Trails Fund, and in particular the proposed additional $500,000 to be transferred from the Open Space, Parks, and Trails Fund to the General Fund. This additional transfer of $500,000 was proposed by the former city manager to balance the preliminary 2020 budget. The board clarified that the dedicated 2005 sales and use tax was not voted in by the people to balance the budget, and expressed concern that no explanation was provided by the former city manager for the additional $500,000 transfer other than to balance the budget. In 2009, when the city experienced economic hardship during the Great Recession, a formula was derived involving extensive analysis by the advisory board to calculate the actual associated cost of maintenance per acre for all city lands acquired since the 2005 sales tax was instated. The board reinforced that this formula and subsequent annual calculations that have been utilized since 2010 can legally fall under the ballot language of the April 5th, 2005 2A ballot question, but maintenance on city lands prior to the sales tax authorization do not. The proposed additional $500,000 transfer would set a terrible precedent for future uses and reliance on the dedicated Parks and Recreation sales tax funds. The memorandum goes on to state the board's unanimous support for retaining the initial proposed budget, not including the $500,000 that was recommended more recently by the former city manager. What I'd like to recommend on behalf of the Natural Lands Board is that the City Council consider inviting all three advisory boards to the study session next Tuesday so we can have further discussion about the ramifications of the latest changes to the 2020 budget that are being proposed. We're concerned that there's not enough transparency nor thought given to this seemingly arbitrary amount of money that would be transferred for balancing the budget.
Thank you. Appreciate that recommendation, and perhaps that can be brought up today during future agenda items. Okay. Harry Regal, you were already on you were on here twice, okay? So you, okay? And Alyssa Ray, you were also on here twice, okay? Rich Holine.
Hey guys, want to pass around something right quick for everybody. This is a copy of a resolution, a set of recommendations that emanated from our October 17th Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting. I need to say I'm Rich Holine, I'm the chair of that board. I live at 602 Powderhorn Trail, and it's a pleasure to be associated with that board and the advice we try to do on behalf of the citizens and the council's bidding. Much of what I was going to cover, I think Steve Whiteman eloquently just stated. This document that you have in front of you, I believe you've seen before. I'm pretty sure you have. I would just ask if you would take a look at that again, and particularly the thinking that's reflected here by the Parks and Rec Board about its recommendations for how the 2005 and 2015 revenues should be applied in the coming budget in 2020. And I think the rationale for the positions that we laid out and our recommendations are pretty clear in this. I had the opportunity to sit in earlier this afternoon when you guys were doing the study session on the proposed changes in how some of these monies, as well as the 2019 tax funds, might be allocated starting with this coming year. And I noted that several councilors said this would just be for 1 year on a trial basis because we do have to get the budget done. And then we'll subsequently invite our advisory boards in for discussions about this. I would like to suggest to you that you see if it's at all possible to have us, as I think Steve suggested, meet with you very soon before you finalize the 2020 budget and this possible change in how monies get allocated, so that you can hear from us and give us all a chance to weigh in with hopefully our best thinking as you go forward, because it would be a significant change, as I think Councilor Noseworthy mentioned. Often when you do something, even if you think it's for a short term, it's hard to call it back later. And I fear that perhaps a 1 year thing might just kind of roll on. And I would be concerned about how that impacts our ability to meet what I think is the citizens' clear expectations for how those monies should be used. And particularly in the shorter term, Santa Rita Park, I know our board is really anxious to see some progress made to get that back into community use. And there was money set aside towards that purpose in our recommendations for 2020 budget. And with the city manager's efforts to balance the budget, which I appreciate, seem to tap that money, and that concerns us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I can't quite read this. I want to say Jay Matson. Jojo, okay.
Yes, Jojo Matson, and I live actually in Mancos, 721 Grand Avenue, but I was an educator at Crow Canyon Archaeology Center all summer, so I worked with a lot of Durango schools. And what I want to offer is what I see as a resource that you have for all of the issues that are up on the board, and I think in the future. Logan, Utah, where I went to school, did a garbology project where I studied sustainability and resource use through statistics. Archaeology looks at stuff and makes interpretations on behaviors. And that same stuff and behaviors go on today, which is anthropology. And you have a university right here that's full of anthropologists and archaeologists and business majors and students that in 3 months I was able to give an entire complete picture to the Logan City Council to be able to look at plastic bans and trash use. And that's something that you guys should be able to utilize with this university right here. And I think that it's a double dip because you'll also have students that are going to be aware and also advocacy ingrained in them, in their communities, and being able to actually make an impact in their community. Because even though I wasn't part of Logan, I made a pretty big difference there. So I hope you guys consider that a resource you can look into for some of the issues that you're looking at.
Thank you. I'm gonna, Heiber? Berner. What is it?
Werner Heiber.
Berner, okay. Werner Heber, okay. Sorry, okay. I'm sorry, these sometimes. Typewriter.
That's right. My name is Werner Heiber, and I live on 131 Larkspur Street in Durango. I'd like to thank the City Council for the opportunity to speak. First, I'd like to thank Mayor Melissa for the article, the opinion page you wrote. It was a a very well-written, overall summary of what the city is doing. And particularly, the first part was with regaining trust. You have an engaged community, and you just look at this here, who showed up. And trust, in my opinion, and my experience, was lost under previous management. I have served in 3, I'm still serving in some non-profits right now, 3 non-profits, LPA board, I participated in the KEEP, and we lost a lot of time over the past 10 years. So I really appreciate the management changes you have made. I also want to encourage you to use the engaged citizens and non-profits, which are often more knowledgeable, like Forecor, who specialize in energy and resource issues. They are passionate, these non-profits. They can often do the job, contribute to the city more effectively than staff can, and can assist staff. So I really encourage you to use the non-profits and the citizens that are in this community. And last, when you hire the next, and you have the hiring process in there, we don't, for the manager, we don't just need, in my opinion, not just a manager with technical understanding, but also with emotional maturity. And the other topic I'd like to talk about is climate change. You know, we talked about this on the KEEP. We worked on it at the KEEP for many years ago. Climate change is like smoking. We smoke and we're great. We climb mountains, we're great. We don't feel it. Suddenly 20 years later, oh boy, I don't have as much breath anymore. Quite often then it's too late. That's what's happening with climate change. You have the funds, you have the opportunities, you have the franchise fees. I really urge you to use the tools you have and the community to make a difference. Think globally, act locally. This is where we have to act. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And Ed Horvath.
Good evening. Ed Horvath, 3101 West 2nd Avenue. Just kind of here to echo what Rich Holheim and the gentleman from the Natural Lands Board said, and Sandy Burke, because I am a member of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, but I have a little different perspective because I was also on the committee to pass the initiative 1A last year, and I joined that for 2 reasons. I really wanted to get involved because I came to Durango 65 years ago. Well, actually, Durango came to me 65 years ago. I was born here, and I've watched the roads go up and down, good and bad, all those years. In the last 10 or 15 years, I saw them getting worse all the time. I thought we need a funding mechanism to address the road situation. So I became treasurer, and I advocated for it. But I had another reason. I feared that if it didn't pass, the 2005 and 2015 tax initiatives, they're going to kind of reallocate some of those monies for other things that really the voters didn't really want or didn't intend for it to go to. and it would go to streets somehow. And so now that I've looked at the initial preliminary budget, I think it's happening anyway. And it's kind of, it kind of disturbs me a little bit, but let me draw an analogy. Say you're federal government and you have something you want to do. Say, I don't know, a border wall, and you don't have the money. But, oh, for a technicality, you can take defense money and put that into the border wall and get it done. Well, just because you can do it doesn't mean it's ethical, and doesn't mean it's really right. Well, I feel like the voters in 2005 and 2015 knew exactly what they were voting for, or at least they thought they knew what they were voting for, and they knew where that money was going. And just because you can now move that money somehow into the general fund and do other things with it, that doesn't make it ethical, or it doesn't make it right. So I think there might be a small minority of people, voters advocating to use that money for other things, but I just think it goes against the spirit of what the people voted for in those two elections. And I just want you to honor the voters and let the money be used for what they thought they were voting for in those elections. And that's really all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that is all of our public participation.
Wait, there's another page.
No. And I really appreciate everyone joining us tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your words and for sharing your perspectives. Thank you so much.
Might be a good time to take a 3-minute break.
3-minute break? Yep, okay, 3-minute break.
Yes.
schedule.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. We are going to move on from public participation now at 8 o'clock at night. We're on to proclamations and presentations. And yes, we have, I will come down for this. And Katie, you can join me if you'd like. Katie Isai, correct? Ishai, okay. So we have a proclamation this month. It's Theater Month in Durango, and I will read it. Whereas live theater is a vital part of any vibrant community, and whereas in this world of digital communication, we believe more than ever that experiencing live theater in a collective group provides a valuable connection, one that is shared with real people in real time. And whereas Durango's 3 premier theater groups, Merely Players, Fort Lewis College, and Durango High School each have a production in November, and we want to encourage local audience members to get out and see the live theater. Now therefore I, Melissa Youssef, Mayor of Durango, Colorado, do hereby proclaim November 2019 as Theater Month in Durango on November 5th today in Durango, Colorado. Would you like to say anything?
Just on behalf of all 3 organizations, Durango High School, the Fort Lewis College Theater, and Merely Players, thank you so much. We really believe that theater heals. It gives people the chance to express themselves, to connect with their community, and we couldn't do what we do without the support of our leaders and our community members. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Moving on to presentations, Chief Bob Bramer is going to speak with us from the Durango Police Department. And we can talk about my new car.
Wait a minute. Oh.
It's green.
And it's a police car.
He'll tell us that.
Let's see that in the budget.
Yeah.
Can certainly talk about that. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. My name is Bob Bramer, and thank you for having us, the Durango Police Department representative here this evening, to discuss and provide an update of our department and where we're at. I only have 5 minutes, so I hope this will actually inspire some further public engagement here in the near future about some hot topics that we're facing within our department. So who are we at the Durango Police Department? We are 68 sworn proud members within the organization of the City of Durango. 13 civilian employees who provide support to the 55 members of the department which are sworn as police officers who go out there and serve your community every day, 24/7, every day of the year. Recent changes we've made over the last few years, we developed a community engagement team. In 2017, that was 2 members that were there just to strictly do problem solving, engage different members of the community, be it business owners, neighborhood groups, other advocates throughout the community in order to figure out problems specifically related to crime and how we can reduce crime by reducing problems and not having to continue to go back and respond to call after call after call and figure out what those are. We had 4 school resource officers at one time. We had to mitigate that down to 2 because of staffing demands on the street in order to continue to be to hopefully not be as reactive as we have been in the past and be a little bit more proactive in our measures to crime reduction. We developed a crime analyst in 2017, which was another position that we created. That position there provides us with data and analytics so we can be more evidence-based and be more strategic in our efforts to combat crime within the city. We also had a K-9 join us in 2018, which again is just another tool for us to be able to combat crime in the area. We also, this year, in mid-2019, based off of recruiting demands and the inability for us to be able to find qualified people to be police officers, we created, with the assistance of the city manager's office, 2 technician positions, which we have labeled police services technicians. They are fully operational right now, and they're taking a tremendous burden off of our patrol staff by handling non-criminal suspect-related crimes, and they're helping us out a lot, and we really appreciate that. We also were able to hire a deputy chief this summer, which has also assisted us in structuring our organization a little bit more effectively and efficiently to meet the demands of the community. So those are some recent changes that we've had. So all of this has been directed towards combating crime. And that's kind of the big part of what I want to talk about this evening is where we're at, okay? This year, Part 1 offenses, let me define that real quick before I go into what this year is and what our 5-year averages and the trends that we're seeing. Part 1 offenses are labeled by the Federal Bureau of Investigation as major crimes. These are going to be your murders, your sex assaults, your robberies, your aggravated assaults, burglaries, larcenies, thefts, motor vehicle thefts, and arsons. Over the last couple of years, because we were able to dedicate a lot of our staffing issues towards proactive measures, because we had the staff to be able to do that, we were able to drive down a lot of our crimes. As you can see for 2019 right now, because of all the efforts we've had with our community engagement team, with our traffic unit, all these different areas that we've had within the organization that go out there and specifically focus on coming up with problem-solving solutions to combat crime, we haven't had that. All we've had a chance to be able to do this year, because our staffing levels on patrol have been down about 25 to 30%, we've had to reallocate those proactive policing techniques to reactive strategies to be able to just keep up with our call volumes out on the road, because we're having challenges with our recruiting efforts. And that's not just our problem, that's a national effort. And that's a national problem right now within our profession. So it's problematic. As you can see, we're above a 4-year average right now. And you can see where those different areas are, where our crimes continue to increase in those areas. And that's concerning and that's problematic. And hopefully we're going to be able to start addressing some of those needs here in the near future, as these further slides are going to demonstrate our efforts to combat that. So as a city of Durango, who are we? In 2010, the population's grown. It continues to grow. We're a very robust community. People want to live here. Our population is increasing. With the population increase brings crime with it. It's just the nature of the beast. City limits have grown since 1995 from about 5.5 square miles to 17 square miles. It's also affecting our response times to be able to get to certain areas within the city in a quicker manner to be able to help the citizens of the communities. So when a crime's being committed, it's taking us longer to get there. It gives the opportunity for the bad guy to get away. All right. So all of these things have a dynamic that comes into play with what we're trying to do. If you look at our staffing levels, we are essentially at the same staffing levels today as we were back in 2006. And we haven't grown much since the early 2000s past that. So we've been flat. Our population increases, our city demographic, our footprint continues to increase, but our staffing levels remain the same. So that's a challenge that we're trying to face as well. Our 2019 recruiting data, as of right now, we've had 70 applicants to date. Actually 72, we tested 2 today. 72 applicants, we've been able to hire 10. 9 of those are still currently at the department. 1 didn't work out, he went through FTL. However, of those 9, 5 of them are in the police academy right now. 2 of them started the application process back in May. We're scholarshiping them through the academy currently as is. They're not going to be graduating out of the academy until December. They're not going to be out of field training until April. It's an 11-month process to get people to where they're on a solo status. This is probably the most important portion of what I want to talk about tonight is retention. Okay, how we're going to solve our recruiting issues is through retention. This is since 2006. This is the numbers that I have that we've collected since that time. I came on with the department in 2005, and we've been paying attention since about that time. If you look at the numbers, the yellow graph, the yellow bars right there, that's how many people we hired in each one of those subsequent years. The blue represents how many we currently still have in the organization today. I heard earlier mentioned today that our retention rate or our turnover rate is 14% at the city, 14.1. Ours is about 73 since 2006. Okay. A lot of these officers aren't leaving the profession. Most of these officers are just going to another agency somewhere. These are the plates that we have. Our patrol workload currently right now, the IACP model for patrol workload is 40-60. So that's 60% of the time is you're responding to calls, you're writing reports, you're doing training, you're doing your operational needs within an organization. So that's your encumbered time. That's the time that's accounted for that you have to do in order to get your job done. That additional 40% of your time that you have left over at the end of the day is the time that you can go out, you can be proactive, where you can go out to the street and you can actually problem solve, engage with your neighbors, engage with your businesses, engage with your citizens, figure out and do some directed actions to reduce crime. Right now, our estimate is we're about 80-20. And that's also why we're seeing an imbalance between what we're able to do out there as officers, as a department, to actually drive down these numbers, because we're being strictly reactive right now. We're not being proactive as before, and that's why we're seeing our numbers start to climb. However, the best thing about this whole thing is our officers are awesome, and they continue to do outstanding work throughout the community. And I want to circle back to that crime part at the very end of it, but right now I want to throw out a couple things that we've done this year. Officer Leonard Martinez is one of our school resource officers. Earlier this year, he received a Safe to Tell report. He worked from the time he received that Safe to Tell report early that afternoon until about 10 o'clock that night, tracking down this kid and tracking this kid who was a suicidal threat to himself, tracked him all the way to Moab. Got the Moab Police Department involved in this, and they were able to save and intervene and save that kid's life. So he saved a life that day, and he was rewarded by 9R recently for that effort. Just recently, as of October 25th, Officer J.J. Roundson, there's a known drug house that we have up in the Crestview area. We've been working on this house for months and months and months, but we can't get in because these people are smart, all right? Crime is like a virus. Crime grows, they modify themselves, their techniques to what we're trying to do. So we have to countermand those. We have to always kind of continue to change those things, how we're going to do it, our strategies and everything else. Officer Roundson happened to be driving by. He knew the house. He had identified there was disturbance going on there. Through his proactive policing, he was able to identify what's going on. They pulled methamphetamines out of there. They pulled multiple stolen bikes out of that. They returned this bike to this gentleman. It was a $4,000 mountain bike they recovered. This is one snippet. You can't really read it, probably in the audience right now, but this is a comment from our Facebook page about this lady who was victimized in another city. And she's praising our police department for the outstanding work that our officers continue to do. Another success story. We have a very vulnerable population with our community, and that's our homeless community. We knew that we had a methamphetamine dealer that was going out there, and he was targeting that community because of the addiction issues that they have with them. We were told we couldn't get into that drug dealer and bust him, okay, because he had a network out there that did counter surveillance. They knew our patrol routes, they knew our police cars, they knew what we were going to do. Our officers took that task on challenge, and they went in there and they got this guy, and they were able to pull this amount of methamphetamines off that guy that day, and hopefully safeguard that vulnerable population down the Man's Soup Kitchen area. Don Marie Lawson was another officer that also took 68 grams of methamphetamine. That's quite a bit of meth off another person that was selling meth to the homeless population down there. So we've got bad people that are targeting people within our community very heavily, okay? And we've been able to partner with members of that homeless community to try to help them so that they can focus on not just mere survival and their addiction issues, but maybe get out there and actually focus on something like getting a job or a home or getting the treatment that they need. And we're intervening on that. As of September 1st, we had all kinds of motorcycles and other cars being stolen throughout our community. It was night after night after night, not just in our county or in La Plata County, but here in the city of Durango as well. We partnered with the sheriff's office. We were able to find out who these people were. We recovered multiple ones. We actually made a COCA case because it goes out of state. The Organized Crime Act is what that COCA stands for. So we were able to do that. Another great one was this little guy right here, JJ. He had his bike stolen. He had his bike stolen by somebody. Another student at Durango High School saw his bike being ridden by the thief. They called us. We went out there. We got it. We were able to get this kid's bike back. He was in tears to get his bike back. He was so excited about that. This guy, Chad Nolan, anybody that lives out here this last summer knows that we were chasing this guy all over the place. He was breaking into occupied houses. He was going in. He crawled in bed with a 15-year-old girl, not to do anything, just to go to sleep, as far as we know. But this guy was going all over the place. It was a big story. We dedicated an entire task force, 15 people. That's a third of our department to go out there and try to catch this guy, and we did. Another one, we actually engaged with the community on this one too. We put information out, the community helped us, they gave us the information we needed. We were able to get this guy and get him off. He was down there committing all kinds of burglaries and trespasses down in the Three Springs area. We were able to catch him as well. The whole point behind this is crime is a disease, and it's in our community. We need the tools, we need the people to be able to combat that. Recruiting, retention, they go hand in hand, okay? The best way to solve our recruiting issues is to retain our people. We've got excellent people here. We need to continue to grow with our community. We need to understand what our problems and our plights are here, and we need to continue to focus on doing our job, you know, and that's catching bad guys. And I want to commend the outstanding people that we have working in our organization, the dedication that they have. And if you look at that crime stat, that earlier slide that I had with all the Part 1 crimes on there, majority of those crimes have been solved. Okay, our crimes are up, but we're solving those crimes. Okay, most of those crimes, we have like a 70 to 80% clearance rate on every one of those categories on that, which is outstanding police work, but we're not preventing crime, and that's why those numbers are going out, they're not going down, even though we're catching the bad guys. So, thank you.
Very much. Thoughts, comments, council?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That was powerful.
Are you going to tell us a minute about the green vehicle?
Oh, yes, okay, I'm sorry. Last week, Deputy Chief Curran and I went to Chicago for the International Chiefs of Police Conference. While I was there, Ford, they have a vendor show, thousands of vendors there. Ford was there. They're coming out with a new car. It's a hybrid car, and it's a police interceptor, so it's basically one of the current models of police vehicles that they have.
I told you about that.
Yeah, you did, actually, Councilor. And we checked it out, we talked to them. It's going to be something that we're definitely going to explore. They said they would demo one of our cars to us, and we could take a look at it. From what the salesperson told us, it could be a very viable option for moving forth with the goal that you want to achieve by lessening our carbon footprint.
It'd be great. That is so exciting. It'd be great.
So there's a little die-cast memo, so I don't know if you got, whoever wants to fight over it, you can put it in your office, but
It's the mayor.
Thank you
it's a
very
representative.
much. And thank you for the presentation and keeping us informed. It's very helpful.
And if you need any additional information on that, I went through really quickly, but I have all the stats.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Assistant City Manager, Director of Community Development, Kevin Hall.
Good evening. Now I have a really exciting story. That was nothing.
Do you have a car for us?
I bring no gifts. But what I do bring is a quick update on what the Community Development Department is all about. That's not it. But if you'd like me to.
That was like really exciting story.
Someone didn't put it up, so let me see what I can find. That's the one we're looking for. Okay. Just think we're just getting started.
We really are.
So real quickly, I just want to talk about what the community development is and does. Here's a bit of an org chart that shows the various functions we have. There's 4 divisions. It's really broken into a lot of different segments when you look at the org chart, but real quickly, we have a planning and building division, an engineering division, sustainability division, code enforcement, and parking. And really for the planning and building, it really has to do with anything that wants to get built or developed in the community. So we have a team of 34 that includes all of the divisions. But the planning and building division has 8 planners in it, as well as a chief building inspector. Pretty much review and permit all the new development in the community, whether it's private or public. They also are responsible for the comprehensive plan, the land use code, design guidelines, as well as implementing international building codes. A lot of the things like the comp plan, the housing plan, the character district plans, those are more long-range plans that are part of that they're responsible for. We also administer the city's business development and redevelopment program, which has a variety of tasks associated with it, and I'll point out a couple of those momentarily. The arts and culture program is also part of this. So the city's arts collection is managed through the Creative Economy Commission and staff. I wanted to, before I hit on these numbers, just talk about engineering is a part of those reviews as well. So they really look at all the engineering standards that go into all these developments that we're reviewing and permitting. They also deal with some capital project implementation. They do have to manage the engineering plan standards and specifications, so those are updated pretty regularly with that staff. The stormwater management program is one we've come to the council before and talked about. That's a pretty significant state mandate that requires significant staff time to make sure we're keeping the waterways of the community clear. Excavation permits, right-of-way permits, public improvement agreements, traffic studies, traffic control plans. So really a significant amount of day-to-day tasks. Those are the things that are coming in the front door that are really the number one focus of the team down at River City Hall. Then the sustainability program, certainly got a little taste of some thoughts on that tonight. We have one employee, Imogen Ainsworth, who's a sustainability coordinator, and she is charged with implementing the types of things we were talking about earlier tonight. Code enforcement, we have 2 gentlemen who do code enforcement, so that's everything from the municipal code and the land use code, so they're quite busy out there dealing with that. And if you want to look at the numbers I have on the screen here, you can see the types of numbers we've been dealing with in 18 and 19 anyways. And while a little bit steady, you see some climbing in a number of places. What we also know that what comes in River City Hall for requests for development, nothing is easy anymore. All the easy stuff's been done, so we're dealing with redevelopment and we're dealing with hillsides and places that aren't ideal or simple to develop, so pretty time-consuming stuff. But these are some of the numbers we see come through planning and engineering, and then also code enforcement. You can see their numbers are going down a little bit in estimates for 19, but the number of violations are going up, which isn't necessarily a good sign, but what it does mean is that we're issuing citations when we find the violations. I think it's first and foremost for our enforcement officers is try to educate and keep folks from not following the codes correctly, but to have them do it in accordance with the rules we have. So the other thing that happens down at River City Hall is a lot of ongoing special projects, and I'm not going to call these all out, but these are the types of things that we work on a day-to-day basis. Most of this is staff-oriented, although from time to time we have consultant participation in this. Certainly the 2020 budget proposal has funds that would be used for some consultant participation, but it's really a kind of a soup to nuts here in terms of different types of things that the staff is involved with, and it never ceases to amaze me the new things that come forward on a daily basis. So the things that come in the front door on a daily basis are the one thing that we have to make a priority of, because there's timelines on that, and also certainly meeting the desires of the community in terms of getting new development on the ground. But the special projects are equally important because they frame the work that people want to come in and do a development. These are the types of things that really help them understand how they should proceed doing those types of development. But then you have other things in here like the 2020 census is coming up, and that's a really large task. We have to be on it, and we have staff working on that right now. So with that, I guess what I wanted to also point out is boards and commissions that are staff. We have Planning Commission, Design Review Board, Historic Preservation Board, the Creative Economy Commission, which was the Arts Commission, and then the Board of Adjustment. Board of Adjustment only meets as needed, so we don't have them in here too often, but occasionally we do need to have them in here. So that's kind of the big picture of the department, and what I guess I wanted to do real quickly is just put some faces on the department. This is day to day, and as I posted these photos, and I wasn't really selecting it out of a huge group of photos. These are all the photos I got, and almost everyone's got a smile on their face, so I think that's pretty excellent. Well, Barkley might not right here because he's facing a bear, but we can't see that.
And is that a smile on Mark's face? I wasn't sure what that one was.
Well, truth be told, you know what that was? I will tell you, we were at the groundbreaking for the Lumion, Phase 2, and at the time, Mayor Marbury handed me her phone and asked to take a picture, so we did a bit of a selfie on her phone.
Oh.
I've cropped myself out of the picture.
Okay.
And then, yeah, just a couple, here's some of our parking folks in action. And then why not finish up with some of the loony stuff that happens when we have crazy Christmas sweater or Halloween things. So, but we have a great team. They work hard every day. I believe they believe in their work and they like what they do. And we have a great team that seems to work well together. So unless there's questions, that's kind of probably more than 5 minutes.
Thanks for that update.
Thank you.
Sure.
Very much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for all your hard work and for all the hard work of the staff. Okay, moving on, I believe, to the review of the consent agenda. So this is an opportunity for council to pass items with no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests that an item be removed from the agenda. Do we have any items that councilors would like to remove from the consent agenda? Oh, do we need to read it first?
Oh, that's right.
Sorry,
Yes.
I'm a little behind right now. Ms. Phillips, can you please read our consent agenda items for us?
Items 6.1 through 6.3 are approval of minutes. 6.1, the joint study session of October 15, 2019. 6.2, the city council regular meeting of October 15, 2019. 6.3, the study session of October 22nd, 2019. Items 6.4 and 6.5 are discussion and possible action items. 6.4 concerns approval of Resolution R 2019-44, approving the amendment to the service plan of the Three Springs Metropolitan District Number 4. 6.5 concerns the Arrowhead Ridge subdivision lots 5 and 6 boundary adjustment final plat. And item 6.6 is a request for public hearing with the proposed date of November 19th, 2019, to consider the 30th at Main Avenue preliminary condominium plat.
Thank you. Do we have any counselors that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda tonight? 6.4. Okay, 6.4? Anything else? Okay. Can we have a motion to approve items withholding item 6.4, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, accepting 6.4.
Second.
Ms. Phillips?
Counselor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes.
Counselor Baxter? Counselor Patine?
Yes.
Mayor Youssef?
Yes.
So, my turn?
Yes.
Oh, so the only question I had about 6.4, which is the amendment to approve service plan for the Three Springs Metropolitan District concerning the approval of the city manager for them to do bonding and other such things. I just was wondering, how does this compare to other districts? Do we have similar districts? What do we do with them?
I will tell you that this was an error when it was done. This isn't typical to have city manager participate in that sort of thing.
Okay.
So it was picked up on and requested to change, and that's why we brought it forward. It seemed fairly straightforward because it isn't something we typically have.
Okay, great. That's all I wanted to know. Then I would make a motion that we pass consent agenda item 6.4.
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Phillips?
Counselor Brookie?
Yes.
Counselor Baxter?
Yes.
Counselor Patine?
Yes.
Counselor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Youssef?
Yes. Okay, I don't believe we have any further public participation.
Oh. Sure.
What?
I think we outdid it tonight. Moving on to legislative and policy-related hearings, we had 2 on our agenda tonight. Please note this is an opportunity for citizens to provide formal input into our decision-making process. The format of these hearings is intentionally organized to ensure transparency and fairness to all parties involved. We will welcome all public testimony for our public hearings. We will limit comments to 3 minutes. Structure of our hearings tonight, we're going to have a staff report followed by public testimony. We'll have questions from council, further response from staff, and motion.
Okay.
With that,
Good evening, City Council. So tonight is the public hearing on the proposed budget for FY 2020. This budget presentation will be on the proposed budget. I will have a few comments about items that were discussed either at the workshop or at previous study sessions that will be current direction from council that will show up in the reconciliation of the budget prior to budget adoption on December 3rd. So this public hearing is to examine the 2020 proposed budget and receive public comment. The operating budget is in the amount of $94,158,060. It includes operating expenditures, interfund transfers, transfers to capital improvement program. The capital improvement funds comprise an additional $13,844,000 and $13,844,463. So the budget process, as you know, begins on September 3rd when council adopted the goals. Staff had been working before that with beginning to look at their budget proposals for 2020. We conducted a public workshop on August 8th. On October 1st, I presented the city manager's proposed budget to you here at this council meeting. On the 7th and 8th, we spent a lovely 16 hours together where we reviewed the budget in the budget workshop. And then on the 15th, there was a joint study session with the Board of County Commissioners to discuss joint sales tax and the airport budget. And then on October 22nd, we had the community support funding for contracted services as well as the bid budget. Today, earlier, we discussed policy direction on the compensation plan and policy direction on dedicated revenues, and we will look at the reserves on the 12th. And I believe we will continue to discuss the dedicated revenues as well, but we can hold that for a little bit later. Tonight is the public hearing on the budget, and we will continue to refine our reductions as staff. Between the 8th of October and the 31st, as I mentioned, staff proposed additional cuts based on 5-year actual averages for the 2020 budget that we will bring forward to you in reconciliation. On November 19th, we will be here in the council chamber for a special study session to hold a 2-hour budget reconciliation item. And then we will be reading the budget to you for adoption on December the 3rd. The proposed budget reflects City Council's goals that were adopted in September. There are 5 goals that are shown on this slide. The first goal is to continue to address Durango's affordable and attainable housing, including options for the homeless population. Number 2 is to expand Durango's unique identity as a driver of enhanced quality of life and a sense of place. Goal number 3 is to improve environmental resiliency and encourage responsible stewardship of natural resources. Goal number 4 is to require and support effective utilization of resources to supply the following. There are a number of objectives below this goal. And then number 5 is to advance fiscal sustainability and resiliency. The council goals can be found on the city's website that includes all of the objectives. So at a glance, this budget, as I mentioned, reflects the new council goals. It implements the compensation study recommendations. This will be a reconciliation item based on the discussion tonight. There will be the recommended compromise, which adopts the pay plan, 5% up to a 5% increase for years of service, and then for those not receiving an increase of 3% cost of living. There are 6 new positions included in the compensation plan. And in the budget, there are 6 for the library, 1 head lifeguard, and 1 communications manager. The budget initiates the urban renewal formation. It opens the library on Sunday and extended weekday hours. The Airport Fund continues to address capital projects, and the Transportation Services Fund continues to look at fiscal sustainability issues and how to address those. In this budget, things that are new, we have the FY 2019 tax for street projects and operations. The current budget has $2 million for street maintenance included in the operational budget and $2.25 million for capital projects. And we had additional discussions earlier today, and we'll continue those with information for reconciliation. There are no new taxes proposed in the 2020 budget. This budget has an assumption to implement water and sewer rate study recommendations. However, we did receive direction from council to look at a 0% water increase with a 1.15 differential for water rates. The current budget has a 3% or a 2% water rate increase and a 1.15 differential. So that is something that will be coming forward in reconciliation, and we will discuss later this evening. The sewer rates are projected in this budget to increase at 3% with the 1.15 differential for out-of-city residents. That is remaining the same. We will discuss this also later tonight. Another assumption that is made in this budget is a 3% increase for trash and recycling rates that are based on the study, and we're still awaiting council direction on that. The capital improvement projects we can go through, and then a general fund reserve balance. The focus of this budget is to attain a 25% reserve balance by 2025. I'm going to go through the compensation plan because we already talked about it. Budget reductions, I'll dip into this a little bit deeper here, but on October 8th to the 31st, we did discuss with staff to review their actual operating expenditures over the last 5 years and look at and propose budget reductions for 2020. The City Council had mentioned to us that you are in favor of providing special appropriations throughout the year as opportunities and needs arise, and this was very helpful to staff when making the budget cuts. Employees, as you know, and I mentioned earlier this evening, employees are the largest asset to the City of Durango, and we've identified the $800,000 in reductions, which will cover more than 50% of the compensation plan implementation that we discussed earlier tonight. So all of our operating fund expenditures in the 2020 proposed budget, where do they go? 55% of the operating expenditures are within the general fund. 13% are within the internal service fund, 7% the water fund, 12% in the sewer fund,
5% in the airport fund. Transportation services is also 5%, and then 3% for sustainable services. When we look at the general fund balance and the projected remaining fund balances, in 2019, the beginning fund balance actual was $447,379. The projected ending fund balance is $8,990,930. And the change in fund balance for 2019 is 1.5 million. I'm gonna round the numbers. Looking at the 2020 budget, based on what's in the current proposed budget, the beginning fund balance will be $8.9 million, with the ending fund balance projected at 9.1. We'll have a small change in fund balance based on the proposed numbers with $123,000. For the general fund, the total revenues, we're looking at an increase of 8.3%, with a 3% city sales tax growth over 2019's adopted budget and 1.8% over the 2019 forecast. Charges for services have an increase of 4.2%. As our residents are looking at the budget, you can look at these charges for services in the category on each budget page. The transfer from the 2019 tax, as I mentioned earlier, for operations or in the operations budget for maintenance of streets is $2 million. In the expenditures, we're looking at an increase of 10.2% with the implementation of the compensation study and opening the library on Sundays and extending the hours. And as I mentioned earlier, there are 6 new positions for the library, 1 head lifeguard and 1 communications manager. There are $400,000 included in capital improvement projects for the general fund, and $2.25 million for street projects will be funded out of the 2019 sales tax. When we look at the proposed budget for revenues in the general fund, we ask where these monies come from. So taxes and assessments make up 66% of the general fund revenue. Licenses and permits are 2%. Our intergovernmental revenues are 6%. Charges for services are at 10%. And then we have fines and forfeits at 1% and miscellaneous at 16%. When we're looking at our sales tax revenue, sales and use tax revenue, our revenue here is based on trend analysis. You can see that we have small, steady growth over the years with our sales tax increase. And we're looking at approximately a 1.8% increase between 19 and 20. Our general fund expenditures are broken out here. So if you looked at the budget book under Fund 11, under all general fund expenditures, you can see that 35% of those expenditures are for public safety, 20% for parks and recreation, general government is 21%, streets at 9%, library, 7%. Community support funding is at 2%. Non-departmental is 5%. And then we have a transfer to capital at 1%.
Quick question.
Yes.
For public safety, that's fire and police?
For public safety, that is fire and police.
And 911.
And 911. Communications, thank you. So the restricted funds that we have, these funds are restricted based on ballot language or on the type of revenue that it is. The special revenue funds under this type of fund are the 2015 Sales Tax Fund, the Road Impact Fee Fund, Durango Tourism Fund, Conservation Trust Fund, Storm Drainage Fund, Park Development Fund, and then 2 that I omitted from the slide on accident, which is the 2019 fund and the 2005 fund. Our special revenue funds, we have the Durango Tourism Fund, which has the total balances in the budget as shown here, 1.2 million. Our road impact fee fund of 250,000, the 2015 sales tax fund and the 2019 sales tax fund. I'm going to look at Devon. We're missing the 2005 on here. So we apologize for that. I will make a disclaimer that Devon and I went back through the budget and we are rebuilding everything from scratch. So we're trying to vet the numbers to make sure that we understand where every one of them is coming from. And so as a small disclaimer, there may be some omissions that we didn't get into this presentation, and I will apologize for that. In terms of the internal service funds, we've got the General Services Fund, the SURF Fund, the Risk Manager Fund, and the Self-Insurance Fund. These internal service funds look like this. The Self-Insurance Fund is the largest. followed by the SURF fund, which is our capital equipment replacement fund, our risk manager fund, and then general services. Our enterprise funds, which have revenues that are generated from the fund, pay for programs and services within that fund. So the money does not go outside of those buckets. We have water, sewer, sustainable services, airport, and transportation services as our enterprise funds. If you look at all of the enterprise funds together, this is what they look like on the pie chart. Our sewer fund is the largest at $10 million, followed by the airport fund, the water fund, transportation services fund, and the sustainable services fund. Transportation services includes parking, multimodal, and transit, and sustainable services is trash, recycling, and sustainability. We'll dip into the funds here, a little bit of highlights that we'll run through very quickly. But Water Enterprise Fund, the total revenue increase of 4.1%. This is based on the 3% projected increase. So these numbers will change with reconciliation based on what you adopt tonight, should you choose to move forward with the first reading of the ordinance. Residential and commercial rate increase here is that 2%. The out-of-city differential. Our operating expenses in this fund are decreasing by 47.5%. The staffing is the implementation of the comp plan, and then there's $1.2 million in capital projects that are projected or proposed for this fund. In the sewer fund, we're looking at a total revenue increase of 2%, with the residential and commercial rate increase of 3% and out-of-city differential to 1.15 ratio. The proposed operating expenses are decreasing in this fund by 16.7%, implementation of the comp plan, and then capital projects in the amount of $2.65 million for this year in the proposed capital projects. In the airport fund, we're looking at an increase in revenues of 17.8% due to an increase in fees and charges schedule. Parking revenues from on-site parking continue to increase, and our projected increase is at 8.5%. The operating expenses in this fund increase 17.7%, the implementation of the comp plan, and then for capital in this fund, we're looking at a transfer to the capital projects fund of $170,547 to address several small-scale projects on airport property, and then an additional $2.5 million in capital projects funded through the FAA, PFC, and CFC funds. Looking at the Sustainable Services Enterprise Fund, the total revenues are projected to increase at 6%. This includes a 3% rate increase for residential and commercial solid waste and recycling fees. No increase to the sustainability fee is proposed for this budget. Expenses are decreasing by 1.1%, implementation of the compensation plan, and then a transfer to capital of $50,000 for sustainability projects. In the Transportation Services Fund, we have a total revenue decrease of 8.1%. This is due to the step-down plan based on the reallocation of funds from our transit grants. The parking revenues will remain stable, and then our federal grant is decreasing. The other large piece of this decrease is a capital project. We purchased new buses this year. We do not have a grant application or award for new buses for next year, so that's $260,000. The expenses, again, are decreasing. The fund continues to struggle to become financially sustainable, and we continue to work on that. Implementation of the compensation study, and then a transfer to capital of $150,000 for parking meter upgrades. When we look at the yes?
That was a state redistribution of funds, not a reallocation, not a City of Durango reallocation.
No, not a city, thank you, Dean. Not a reallocation. The state made a policy change on how they distribute the pass-through funds from the FTA for operating.
Thank you.
So we have multi-year capital projects. We will talk about all of the capital projects. We have them broken out here by the general fund, special revenues, and then enterprise funds. When we look at the general fund projects, we have the Stormwater Master Plan, Phase 3, Grandview Access Control Plan, Public Art Cost Share Program, and then GIS planimetric and contour updates, and network storage. These are all one-year purchases, one-time purchases that are proposed in the 2020 budget. When we look at the capital projects for the special revenue funds, I've highlighted a number of items in orange here. And these projects are programs that you see in the CIP that come year after year after year. And it's important to call those out. We'll talk about the 50/50 sidewalk program as an example. There's $50,000 for the 50/50 sidewalk program in this year's budget. This is a request that staff makes every single year for the 50/50 sidewalk program. Should the money not be spent in full like in 19, we'll roll the rest of that money forward so it can be spent in 2020 for that same purpose. The bike ped safety improvements and design for multimodal out of the 2015 half cent is also like this, as well as recreation facility improvements, the community forestry plan, open space maintenance, seal coating and surface preservation, street reconstructions. I should not have highlighted Thomas Drive because we're only going to do that once. But those are all projects that are more operational capital maintenance projects that come year after year. When we look at the enterprise fund projects, one that I can highlight that is similar to that in the sewer fund is the in-situ sewer line replacement and manhole rehab. That is something that is requested year after year to continue to maintain this crucial component of our system. I am not going to read through all of these because if you're interested in them, there's a page in the budget for each item. The Highway User Tax Fund, we'll be discussing this evening. It's distributed from the gasoline tax. So when you go to the gas pump and you pump the gas into your car, this comes from the gas tax. And each municipality receives a distribution of HUTF money, Highway User Tax Fund, and it must be used for streets or street-related purposes. It can also be used for bicycle and pedestrian programs. The city expects to receive $526,000 in 2020, and the city expects to receive approximately $4 million to spend approximately $4 million in streets and street-related purposes. So if you're interested in where this falls, if you look at street maintenance in the operations budget, you'll see this as a revenue. So the next steps for this very exciting process, we are here tonight at the public hearing for the budget. We will hear from our community. We will have reconciliation on the 19th, and we will come back to you for adoption of a budget on December 3rd. So I just want to thank all of the staff, and I would like to thank the community for the feedback. Your feedback counts. There were items that are included in the budget. For example, the community support funding. We continue to have conversations, and we couldn't do this without everyone's help. So we're ready to hear what the public has to say.
Thank you, Amber. Do we have any public hearings?
That is actually
That's what I thought.
the other sheet, but I don't know if there was any other items.
I'd like to speak.
Okay. Do we have anybody else after Sweetie? Okay, just Sweetie. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I worked on budgets for, I'm Sweetie Marbury, and I live at 2256 West 2nd Avenue. As a city councilor, I worked on city budgets for 8 years. I know they are long and complicated and sometimes difficult to understand when you're the first time you're on a city council. But I want to compliment the staff for the compensation. I really want to thank the city council. I attended the study session today about the compensation for employees. Amber is absolutely right. The city employees are the best and the biggest asset that we have in Durango. There are men that are out at midnight during freezing weather working on broken sewer pipes. There are men and women that dedicate their lives to the city of Durango through the police department. I'm very happy to see about the compensation plan because I believe that the police department will only benefit from this increased revenue to recruit and retain these young officers. They come to Durango, they are well trained, and then they go someplace else for more money. We all recognize that. I support the water and sewer rates. I believe that we have to keep up up with capital projects, and this is a minimal amount of money. I believe it's going to cost me about $4 a month, and I feel very confident in the sewer staff and the Public Works Department about their plans. And we all know that plans are accepted and the money is allocated, and then the project may take a year or 18 months or 2 years to complete. And that money for capital projects, it doesn't go away. It's not hidden. It's quite evident, and it rolls over until the projects are completed, sometimes due to weather complications or actually equipment complications. They don't always get completed as quickly as we'd like to. The recycling fees are a bargain. Recently, I've been at the La Plata County Transfer with my truck full of junk. And I've waited in line. There's been 10, 12 cars and trucks there on a Monday, on a Tuesday. I feel very fortunate as a city resident that I get to use a recycling and that I don't have to go every week to the transfer station with my car or my truck to unload all of that. I feel like our fall and our spring cleanups are a tremendous asset, just like Lake Nighthorse. When I first got on city council, everyone bombarded me with when is Lake Nighthorse going to open? It did, and I look forward to the new beach amenities, because that is a moneymaker for the city of Durango. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No further public communication. Okay, questions, comments from council?
I have a few, Amber, I'd actually like to go back up to some of the slides. I think you said it's a 10% increase in expenses over previous year, but that will include the 2019 tax dollars. So I think from telling the story of what are we really looking at, if that's true, you might want to look at how much that 2019 tax, if you that's a tax that's dedicated. If you remove that, what do the expenses or the increase to the general fund, what does it really represent? So I think that's an important thing to look at. Can you go back to one of the early slides too? I think it's also important to discuss on the compensation that we did not, we looked at the compensation philosophy today, did not get down to the specifics of adding new positions. So I think that's still a reconciliation discussion. We did discuss upgrading some current positions, but did not look at the new head count, well, FTE head count, so I think that's important. And I'd like to add that while we look at this document describes the capital improvement projects that are proposed, I think that in short order, we need to do a real assessment of our capital improvement project process. I know that we have funds that were appropriated in 2010 that still haven't been spent. So I think that that's something that has to be looked at. In fact, I'm not even certain any funds in that one has been spent, and I understand it, but that's a long time to carry a capital improvement project with no conclusion in sight or resolution. So my concern is that not only looking at what we are appropriating going forward, but what has been appropriated and what remains to be achieved is a significant item that I believe we need to address.
Thank you. Go ahead.
As well, we talked earlier in the study session about this concept of allocation of the dedicated taxes, and in particular, I think now that we've heard from the chair of Natural Lands Board, we've heard from the chair of the Parks and Recreation Board, since that conversation, we are obviously making a pretty substantive change in the former way that we handled those dedicated funds with respect to general fund transfers. And I think the suggestion that we consult with those boards specifically as it affects pretty much their entire purview on a go forward. And I think the articulation that they gave us in terms of the very specific, work that they had done on trying to create allocations that were really genuinely tied to maintenance expenses for their particular purposes was reasonable. And so I just wanted to bring that back up to the council, whether it's a reconciliation, a discussion or not, but I do think those folks should be invited to the study session. I think we should hear from them. I think we should hear in more detail from them about the processes that they've gone through in the past to recommend those allocations and their feelings about what they essentially said they felt was fairly arbitrary, and I don't disagree with them. When we were talking about it tonight, I would just make the point again, that the 2019 funds, it does make sense to me that we are talking about it the way we are, which is the trying to make sure that we're maintaining a substantial and bulk portion of that funding for capital. But to then start to apply that rationale to something that's been in process for a long time, it does not sit right with me. I don't think it's the right move. It's happening quickly, and that's why we have our boards and commissions. That's why we have citizen input, is to listen to them and react to them. So I would just like to recommend to council that we do that and hear from them more specifically. I know there's reasons that happened so quickly because we had these long discussions in our recent budget meetings, and there's just only so many opportunities to have these discussions, but I'm not comfortable with that one.
Okay.
As you know, Chris, when we were having that discussion, I expressed a similar concern that we hadn't discussed. The 2019 tax was a new tax, and so that was very appropriate to have conversations about it, but that the 2005 and 2020, 2015 had been ongoing for quite a while. So I have the same concerns, and I think we should discuss that as a council and with input to see where we really want to go with that. I also recognize that it's proposed for 1 year. I'm just not certain that that's the way to do it. So, and I did want to correct Mr. Whiteman, not correct him, but inform him. I don't think he was here earlier when we did talk about the 20% situation, which did relieve the 2005 tax of that $500,000 adjustment that the previous city manager had made. So even if we move forward with the current proposal, the 2005 tax will not be affected in that way.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it'd be good to have them in a room.
And they know, so they know that,
and
yes.
really have that discussion so that we can make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Yes.
Because I also think it's not extraordinarily clear exactly how that works all the time.
Mhm.
Certainly for every member of every one of those boards. And so they can go back and whatever the outcome of that conversation is, they can advise the board. So I just think that's really happening. And it's a very fundamental change to the way that they're structured and the way those taxes were structured. And I can see why they're reacting the way that they are at this point. So
Perhaps we can bring them to the table next week on the 12th, when we were originally scheduled to talk about the dedicated sales tax. We did it in the big picture because we were kind of talking about multiple issues at once and wanted to look at the whole picture. But why don't we plan on bringing that back to the table next week with the joint boards?
So we'll invite multimodal, natural lands, and parks and recreation.
Yeah, I think so.
Would you like the infrastructure advisory board as well?
May I, before you answer that, may I add that to Councilor Bettines, I think we all have a sense of what people think they voted for. And so when I think about the 1A, I did not expect to see 35% of the funds going straight into the general fund. I never expected to see that estimated amount going to offset what should, in my mind, should be coming out of the general fund. So I think that if you look at that, everybody has a different view of how what they voted for. In the end, it comes down to what's in the ballot language. So I also expressed my concern of offsetting what I consider essential services with a one-time tax. But I'm looking at it as a one-year solution to look through this. I think that if we are going to engage those, then I think the investment needs to also be present. And infrastructure, excuse me, the infrastructure needs to be present so they understand the ramifications. Because if I did the math right, the proposal that you put forward for the 2019 is close to 35% of that money is covering salaries.
The original proposal.
Of the original
From
proposal.
previous city manager. I think
Now it's at a 20%,
Well,
right?
that's what we were discussing. because
Right,
I
so
think
but the
we all
original,
agreed
right, the
that
original budget
was not.
looks at 35% being used to
Correct.
offset the general fund.
Right.
And that's exactly why we talked, today's discussion revolved around percentages, and that's no longer 35, just to make sure the public understands that.
Right.
It's not what's currently being proposed, it's 20. But I too would like to know what the real impact, by today's proposed action of diving in, having further utilization of those 2005, 2015 tax revenues to pay for a larger percentage of maintenance. Knowing that they've internally paid for a lot of that maintenance before, but there seems to be some disparity about how much is paid for actual salaries versus actual asphalt and things that are.
With regards You to mean the 20, street. so that's
It's
2019
that's-
tax, not.
Well, yeah, but, so, how big a hit is it really to those two Parks and Rec and to natural lands? And, what is being deferred as a result of our action? And I like that discussion. I mean, nobody presented, neither of those commissions are going to like the fact that there are, that they have less money to spend, clearly. I mean, nobody wants that reduction. I just want to know what the real hit is. And
At the 20%, the 2015, the implication was an additional $892,000 was going to go towards maintenance at the 20%. But for the 2005, they were going to get, from the original proposed budget, they were getting money back to the tune of $453,000. So it was a net change between those two taxes of $438,000.
And that's the part I was clear on.
Yeah.
What I don't know is what that eliminates in there, physical improvements that are being eliminated by our action, if we take that.
And I think it's a different thing to, we're talking about 2019, those funds haven't been allocated at this point. We're just initiating that. There's no history on it at all. You haven't had a committee that's met, done all the work to talk about that over all these years. That's a different thing. And it's certainly easier to make that decision for me, to say, okay, the allocation, I'm comfortable with 20%. That meets what I understood as a componentry of maintenance. But the other two, they have a long history of figuring out how they're paying for themselves, and they've worked it out for a long time. So not that we can't make that change, we can, obviously, but I think having that happen like this, through this process, does not feel good to me, and obviously doesn't feel good to them.
So if we have that back at the table on the 12th, the other information that might be interesting to see, we looked at 25% and 20%. It might be helpful to look at 15 and 10. I'm sure it's just half.
all three?
20.
I mean, we can. I just want to make sure that I'm providing the right information.
Yeah.
Just to see what it would look like consistently down if we were to change, and if we were to make a change. And then, I don't know, they probably will not have time to meet before we meet next week, but I would propose that we try to do it next Tuesday because the 19th is the budget reconciliation.
Mayor, may I make another comment? Could you go to the proposed funds being transferred to the reserve? I think it's 123,000. And I guess I have deep concerns of that minimal number. We're a $45 million general fund, and if what we're going to be putting into our reserve fund is 123,000, what percentage is that? It's less than, it's in the decimal points. And I'd like to challenge us as counselors that, due to back with the downturn of the economy and the cutting of positions, we added back those positions, but we had the structural problem of not being able to pay for the roads. We chose, as the councils chose to use reserve funds to address the road conditions, and now 123 going into a reserve fund, to me, is not a statement of how we want to build that thing back up. And I recognize the 25% over 20 to 2025 might be a good goal. I think that we may be being short-sighted in the kind of funding we need to weather and to be resilient to any downturn in the economy.
Well, and to piggyback on what you're saying, I agree with that, because one of we actually have two different reserves, and we have a proposed third reserve that are used for different things. So we've got our Tabor reserve requirements, and we have our 3-month operating reserve, and then we have what's been called in the past a rainy day fund, but I'm liking the idea of the opportunity fund, which is what the streets money came out of. And the reason for having that opportunity fund is so that we can take care of things either when we need to, or we can take advantage of opportunities that might be presented, particularly for the URA that's being proposed. There might be something there that we want to do with that. And if we're only doing $123,000, that's not putting very much into a reserve that could benefit the community economically to a big extent over the long term. And so I think that's a little short-sighted. So I agree. I would like to have us focus a little bit more on bumping those reserves back up to where they were 8 years ago, and have an analysis done by the Strategy and Long-Term Finance Committee of where those reserves really should be for their best applicability for what we want to be doing.
What is that ending fund balance as a percent of the total?
It's less than 20. I think we
17.
I think it was 18%, something like that, yeah.
And what, 14%
Is it over 42 million?
Right, so we're looking at the Tabor reserve of 3%, and then we have a 15% in the rainy day fund, and then we have a total of 20%, if I remember what was said at the budget workshop.
No, wait a minute, that's 38%.
No, we have
17 plus 3,
And then you said 15 for the rainy day fund.
15% projecting to, maybe we're projecting to finish, what do we say, 2020, an additional 1% in fund balance, projected 2019 at 15 at rainy day, projecting to finish 17 in rainy day. So 17% in rainy day fund, 3% in Tabor.
So the rainy day fund is the 3-month operating.
The 3-month operating.
Okay, so then at this point, there's how much left in the?
Minimal.
No, right. So
I think that, I think there is there's a strategic committee that's part of the formation of that. There's also another structural conversation that this council hasn't had, that the last one struggled with, and I think that's got to make the agenda in the next year. It would be something I would recommend at the end of this meeting, but that's certainly, to both of your points, to how do you get from here to there is one of the biggest challenges we face, and it's not resolvable in this budget cycle.
But it is on the discussion for next week, next Tuesday, is policy around the reserve funds.
Sure, policy, but
It's interesting that
it doesn't solve our structural problem.
We did talk about the compensation plan in the study, but we skipped over it here. And I mean, I actually think that that's really.
In the study session?
In the study session, but we skipped over it in the presentation. And I think it's a really vitally important thing to talk on, because that, of course, has a major impact on the amount of money we have left for reserves. And,
Oops, going the wrong way. Go ahead.
I mean, it's just.
Well, and so does the amount of the 2019 tax that.
Right.
Or the amount that the operations and maintenance of the streets department that the.
It's the whole picture
General
that we're
fund
looking
used
at
to
together.
support.
And adding 6 positions to keep the library open on a Sunday all comes with a cost.
Yeah, yeah.
So all of these tie together. And that is why we are having these additional study sessions, because we cannot move forward with a budget to bring to you at for reconciliation until we have policy direction. And once we have the policy direction, we'll know what numbers we're working with, so we can come back. And so one of the items that we had talked about previously in the budget workshop was if there's a policy on where you would like the reserve balance to be, and you have a policy related to each of these individual dedicated revenues, and it does not need to be the same, you just have your policy. And we know what revenues or what number of dollars we have to work on for each of those items. And then we have the compensation study on top of that. And if we have the direction, then we can take the numbers, because we know what the projected revenues are, we know what the fund balances are, and we can come back to you and say, this is what we can do. Here are 10 things that we need to cut. We need this amount to cut, and here's some recommended items. These are, discretionary services or whatever they are. And that's, they all fit together. So at some point, hopefully by the end of next Tuesday, we'll have clear direction so we can.
I think you made some ground up. You made some ground up today.
We made great ground
2019
today.
was Decided your compensation study was you got direction on that. But I do have a question on the.
Yes.
But, and I appreciate your questions, and I think you bring up a really good point, and you are a liaison to the Parks and Rec Board, so you have a direct tie, and you've been hearing them. But you are also very, you also wanted to see the entire compensation plan implemented, so it's very difficult to find this balance. And I guess that's why we're all struggling. And I think we have to kind of determine exactly what our priority, what the priorities are.
Well, we're going in a direction. This is the first time this council has contemplated this budget, but we are going in a we didn't have much going in reserve at all. We didn't have any capital projects going on.
Correct.
And so we have made great steps towards, changing that reality, but it doesn't happen overnight.
You had an increase of $1.5 million in the general fund in 2019. That's a fairly significant increase.
No, it is, and that's what I'm saying. I think we're making, it's going in the direction. It's not going to happen overnight. Right.
Do you anticipate any capital improvement projects outstanding, long-standing, that have not seen progress that might need to be reconsidered because they were allocated years ago and not being addressed, or they're not, and that might make some funds available?
That's a good question.
So we have information that we can bring forward. We brought the information on the utilities to council at the budget work session, the workshop that compressed the multiple projects into a project, because there were pieces that weren't part of one that were called out as individual projects, and we have the timeline for those for all that we provided to you in the budget workshop. I do not have any projects. I've asked the directors if there are projects that are just sitting there that we're not going to have done. So,
well, there are some.
There are a few projects, but I don't have them back yet. We need to look at where they are and then what those funds are looking like. And the other question I had to them is if this project goes away, what impacts does it have on the additional projects that you already have appropriated? It doesn't mean if it comes off the books, they can't come back and ask for it.
Right.
But it would put money into the fund balance.
Well, and one of the other things we will have to discuss eventually here too is in some ways best practices are that the city councils reappropriate all funds, ongoing or not, every year. And currently we are not in, we do it through the budget process, but we're not doing it specifically on the projects. And so we don't know where they are. So that's another thing we need to talk about, how we initiate that into the system.
And I would recommend that be a discussion item for the 2021 budget.
Yes, well, that's why I said in the future. Yeah, that's why I said in the future. Yes, exactly. The Strategy and Finance Committee is, yep.
But it is important, it's important to have that.
And I will suggest that that's not a discussion that takes place in October of 2020, but it actually starts in 2020. We start
It would be
looking
a
at
great
those
item for the
improvement projects.
council retreat.
Sure. Would you be willing to send us copies of this?
Yes.
I will send you copies of all of the presentations from this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I also note that Mr. Simpson sent in some items that I think were included in the public record that were not read. I think they were on the document. They were included in the materials
They were
today.
included in the packet.
In the packet.
We all received them.
Yes, noted. Okay.
Somebody's beeping.
I think that, good discussion. I appreciate the presentation, Amber.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for stepping in. It's a critical time. So wondering if we might have a motion from council.
So I'm trying to figure
I
out
don't think we
What do
need
you
one.
want us to do?
I don't think we need
There's a
one.
recommendation. Do we need any action?
No.
No, it was just for the, no formal action.
I think we have to close the public hearing.
Is that all we need to do? Okay.
And no,
I close the public hearing. So we'll move on. So that'll probably be the same with the next, which is the public hearing to consider the annual appropriations ordinance.
Right, so this is just, the appropriation ordinance needs to be adopted prior to setting up the mill levy. So in order to get the timing done, this is just a formality of a appropriation ordinance. Those numbers will flow from the adoption of the budget. So we don't have numbers yet. But in order to get to the place where we can adopt the ordinance, we need to have it here.
Okay.
So this is actual action.
This is,
Actually, this one as well, this one will require the preparation of the appropriation ordinance to bring back.
Right.
but we direct you to prepare that, so we need a motion to do that.
Well, we have to open.
So you prepare an ordinance that has no numbers in it?
Well, they'll have numbers when it comes back. The point when it's first reading, it'll have numbers.
So based on what we have at reconciliation, the numbers from that discussion that council directs staff to move forward with in the budget will go into the appropriations ordinance. And then it will come back on December 3rd with the budget, and we'll adopt the budget and the appropriations ordinance on the same day, as well as the mill levy.
So
certify the mill levy.
the numbers that are in the documentation for this ordinance are not necessarily the numbers
No,
that will be in the ordinance. Okay, so that's the confusing part about the documentation. Okay,
Those are the best numbers that are available right now.
right. Okay, so then I'll make a motion that we approve. Or direct staff to prepare the ordinance for the annual appropriation for the year 20.
Then open a hearing.
Unless you open the hearing, so just
Oh.
open the hearing.
Okay. I thought, we were just, okay.
It's been a long day.
It's only 9:20.
Thank you.
We started at 3 o'clock today.
Okay,
You remind everyone.
Do we, right, and so we have no further staff report on that?
No.
You don't have one, okay, and we have no public hearing, so I'm going to close the public, we have no comment, additional comments from council?
Open the hearing.
Open the hearing.
Well, I'm opening it and I'm going to close it. Right? We don't have any public comment, do we?
There's no one that signed up to speak.
Correct.
And there's no one that wants to
Right.
speak.
No, I don't think so. So I'm going to open the public hearing and I'm going to close the public hearing. Any further comments from staff? Okay, looking for council for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we direct staff to prepare the annual appropriation ordinance for the year 2020.
Second.
Any further discussion from council?
No.
Ms. Phillips?
Counselor Patine?
Yes.
Counselor Baxter?
Yes.
Counselor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes.
Mayor Houston?
Yes. Okay, moving on to item 12, introduction of ordinances. Dirk,
Yes, this is
run us through it.
The first one is 2019-21. This is a ordinance to clear up and clerically change some provisions in the code regarding alcoholic beverages. We've been working on this for quite some time, so unless the council has some specific questions, again, most of these are cleanup items that I recommend be approved for first reading.
What's the ordinance number?
2019-21. We can have discussion or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2019-21.
Second.
Further discussion from council? Any discussion from council? Ms. Phillips, may we have a roll call?
Counselor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Counselor Patine?
Yes.
Counselor Baxter?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes.
Mayor Houston?
Yes. 12.2?
Okay, 12.2 is 2019-22. This is an ordinance amending land use code, again, some cleanup items related to sign, primarily design guides, guidelines, and sign code. It was presented 2 weeks ago. So again, this, unless the council has some specific questions, I recommend approval of 2019-22.
Motion or discussion from council?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2019-22.
Second.
Further discussion from council? Any discussion? Ms. Phillips, can we have a roll call?
Counselor Patine?
Yes.
Counselor Baxter?
Yes.
Counselor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes.
Mayor Houston?
Yes. And
12.3.
Yeah, we'll take a moment to talk about this one because all of our friends from the fire district.
Yes.
are sitting here.
Yeah. For a long time.
Thank you.
That's what they're here for. This one, you had a hearing on in the second meeting in September. It's taken us some time to finish putting the documents together. We've worked closely with fire district personnel, staff, and so we've, I think, arrived at a very workable ordinance and an IGA based on council input on what you wanted to see on the fire impact fee. I'll take a second to run through some of the details here because some of these details were not completely ironed out when you had your hearing. So I hope all of you have had a chance to take a look at this, but I'll point out that the amount of the fee, again, this fee is set to become effective at the first of the year, so the timing here is good. The residential fee that's proposed is $819 a unit. Commercial or other non-residential development is proposed at $1.64 a foot. There's provisions in here about what happens when there's a conversion from residential to commercial. I might point out some of the larger exemptions to the fee so this would only apply to building permits that are issued by the city after the effective date of the ordinance. It wouldn't apply to any development that has a completed building permit application in place prior to the end of the year. They're saying that. This doesn't apply to any remodel, replacement, or enlargement of a residential unit. It will apply in a commercial enlargement remodel only to the extent of increased square footage. It will, there's some details still to be worked out. This agreement, or excuse me, this ordinance exempts any development that is required to pay a fire impact fee pursuant to a development agreement, which primarily means Three Springs and Twin Buttes. Twin Buttes has a fee that those provisions should go away, and this fee should be implemented in Twin Buttes at the first of the year. I'm going to clarify that. And in Three Springs, their fee will remain in place. So that's something that we need some negotiation with Three Springs, but little impact, I think, from a residential standpoint in Three Springs. Probably actually a commercial development in Three Springs itself might pay slightly less than the amount that's set forth herein. But I think that there's not a lot of commercial activity in Three Springs. Most of the commercial activity out there is actually outside of Three Springs. This exempts ADUs altogether, so I want to point that out. That was an item that was subject to discussion, so our district agreed to that provision. And it also exempts out housing, moderate and affordable housing. We'll have to put some guidelines in place for exactly what those guidelines are. But those are the primary exemptions under the ordinance. So I think that there's also a little bit unusual, but the statute requires an IGA to go along with the ordinance. So when you act on this in a moment, you'll need to act on both the ordinance and the IGA. The IGA is primarily revolves around collection details and other sort of, again, housekeeping items in terms of the imposition and collection of the fee. We worked out an arrangement that the fee would actually be paid directly to the fire district, and I think you heard the fire chief indicate that they're going to set up a process that makes that fairly seamless for people to pay and won't hold up the process because they're collecting other fees as it is now. So those are the highlights. I'll be happy to answer questions. I know our friends from the fire district are here. They can answer questions as well. So.
Excellent. So when do you anticipate resolution on some of those, on the housing, affordable housing, for example? I mean, how do you anticipate that getting resolved?
I think that will need to be resolved by something that goes back to council, and we'll work out some of those.
Just an amendment to this resolution?
Well, probably is this calls out a policy that's adopted in that regard, so we'll probably be bringing something back to you.
So would something like the VOA be exempt?
VOA would be, I mean, again, the details of
Yes.
Yes, that's the idea, is anything that's clearly affordable housing like that would be exempt.
The project, the future project that.
Housing Solutions.
Housing Solutions,
Right.
things
All
like
of
that.
those,
And there was a case presented by the DFPD that they actually get more calls, and it was very, there was a nexus between the cost of serving that community, that type of housing versus, 6,000 square foot McMansion. But I still think it's an important thing to consider in our community to make those things happen, even though it's been demonstrated that there are more calls and there's a nexus between the cost of serving them as opposed to. So anyway, I'm happy to see that. And with that, I'd make a motion.
I have a question for you.
Before you make a motion, if you
Yeah.
don't mind. One of the things we talked about, and I didn't see in the IGA, so I may have missed it, but it may or may not have been included in the call out of the services that are provided by the fire district. One of the things we talked about was that they don't just provide fire and emergency services, but they also provide planning approval process participation.
Yes.
And that was going to be something that we wanted to call out because we wanted to make sure that as part of this fee implementation, and Hal and I have talked about this, and he mentioned it and agreed to it also, that their focus on the planning approval process be a specified action of theirs, and that they put a priority on that in some way, shape, or form, so that it helps get the system through the process.
Right, that's not part of this. Those collections, again, the fact that they're collecting this fee themselves, because there was a discussion about whether the city would collect this fee and remit, or whether they would collect it themselves. They're collecting those fees now. This IGA is really directed more specifically at the new impact fee. I think we made it clear, it wasn't added to this agreement. That's true, it was not. Because that detail is actually more applicable to our service agreement with them, I think, than it is to this particular IGA. But
Well, so
if you want to make
can we
an agreement of some sort, I'm sure they won't object to that, but.
Well, that's a kind of policy thing that they're going to be a better, not better, but there is an additional fee when you make a building permit for them to review the plans. In addition to this is just an impact.
I understand, but in neither IGA is the fact that they provide that service mentioned. And so that is one of the obligations of the fire district, is to participate in that planning approval process. And I think it needs to be specified, because I think it needs to be recognized as a very important part of what they do and contribute to our community.
But what they're really doing, I think, is it's really a fire code review, is what it is. So the fire code does provide and delegates to the fire district the authority to enforce the fire code, which means includes that review. So we do sort of delegate that to them as part of that when we adopt the International Fire Code.
So I think what I'm not being clear about is that in our planning approval process, we have a significant number of approvals that need to be obtained by numerous different agencies and numerous different, even the city itself, of course, in order to get that permit. And to have the districts and the participants that issue those permits are a part of allowing those permits to be issued, take an active, see this as an active role for them, not just a passive something that, oh yeah, we do that. Because in reality, the health of this community provides those fees to the fire department. And the smoother and more easily obtained building permits are for economic development issues like businesses or for housing, has a huge impact on how successful we are as a community, and therefore an impact on how much revenue they obtain, and it's all interconnected. And I'm really would like to see the fact that all of our districts, we see this as a joint thing that we're working on together. We're all in collaboration about it, and it's all about the health of making our community healthier in that economic and housing area.
I understand that. And I think probably from my perspective, the better place to put that would be as part of the services contract that we have with them, rather than this one.
Sure.
Okay.
So can we
We can circle back to that.
Great. That would be.
Can I say real quickly? Sure.
Good luck.
I'm Floyd Smith, the attorney for the fire district. The service contract that the district has with the city includes what's called performance guidelines. And if you'll look, and my memory says, I think it starts like it's section 18 and goes through section 21. There's very detailed provisions in there about the services that you're discussing. If those details need to be amended or changed, that would seem like the place to do it. Sure. Because those aren't impact fees, those are a completely different kind of fees. So, but, you know, we're certainly happy to take a look at those and see if they need to be changed or modified in any way.
Thank you.
Okay.
Kind of what I hear Councilor Baxter talk about is the spirit of it as opposed to the legality of it. Or, because as a practitioner, I agree with the attorney, but what you're describing is more routine.
Because I think also, I mean, I agree with Councilor Baxter as well, and it's more the importance of understanding everyone's obligations in working together and getting these processes through the system in an expeditious manner so that projects can be approved quickly and people can be informed. And so how we do that is kind of the question, and how we do that together. It doesn't sound like it's in this IGA, but how can we address this in this service contract?
Actually, I think the performance guidelines actually talk about how many days they have to turn around a set of plans when they come in. And if I remember right, Corolla, the fire marshal, went back through and they've never missed a deadline yet. So.
Might I speak, because that's an operational thing and it's not necessarily
please.
in Bud's wheelhouse. Hal Dowdy, the fire chief with Durango Fire Protection District. Our current standard is that we turn around plans from the date received to the date that we kick them back out in a 3-week time period. And in checking with Mr. Hall, that's a quicker turnaround time than the turnaround time that the city is turning around plans. But we try to do that in an effort to give the developers or the planners for those projects enough time to make those changes and then get those back. And many times the holdup is the redesign of the plans. If they come in right the first time, they get approved and that's it. If they don't come in right the first time, then there's changes that need to be made, and then a new clock ticks from the day that we receive the plans back so that we can review them. I will tell you that in response to conversations that I've had with several of you, we have three certified plan reviewers, and I believe I'm not misspeaking in saying that that's more plan reviewers than the city has for building plans, and our plan reviewers are just reviewing fire-related plans. The other thing that I want to report to you is that in the wake of these conversations, I've added to the 2020 budget for the fire district an additional plan reviewer position and assistant fire marshal for my fire prevention investigation bureau. And so I will have 4 full-time certified plan reviewers on my staff starting as soon as I can hire after 2020, if the good gentleman back of the room approve my budget.
I think that's great. But one of the other things we talked about was at what point in the process you actually get the plans, and working with the city to make sure that all the applicants are adequately informed of what they're going to need to do so that when they do get these revision having to happen, they understand that there's another 3-week possible window for that to happen.
Gosh, I was hoping you'd ask me about that, because in addition to the other things that we've done, we've taken steps and are actually actively meeting right now with the city staff, the county staff, through city management and county management, through the Economic Development Alliance Board, and all of the planners, water purveyors, and those groups in our district or in the area. Pardon me?
San Juan Basin Health? Too?
I have not been at any of the meetings yet. Corolla is doing those, so I don't know who's been at the table, but I believe so. And if they aren't, they will be after tonight, since you mentioned it. But we are making progress in bringing all of those groups together so that we can
fine-tune and expedite the entire process. This is a systemic problem. It's not one agency, and so we've got to handle it by addressing the entire system that comes to bear on somebody that's trying to build, and that's what we're working
And
towards.
I want to say kudos to you, because I know we talked about this a few months ago, and you mentioned that this was something you wanted to really be focusing on, and you're doing it, so I want to say thank you for that.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
I want to recognize it as well because we had that conversation. Thank you.
And appreciate the importance on our community and economic development, so thank you.
So with that said, we'll follow up with some review of.
And see if anybody.
Wait, you
Excellent.
I do have a question on the AJ.
Okay, we have one more question?
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Paragraph 3, I just wanted to,
Of the ordinance.
of the IGA. I think that this is, this was the question I had when we had the public hearing as well, and I think that this deals with this, but I just wanted to ask it, which is that when you say in here that it defraying the cost of capital facilities which are needed to defray the direct impacts of such development, we're trying to sort of pin down that the funds have to be separated and accounted for, that the city has the opportunity to review that account and what the expenses were, and that they have to be directly related to, supporting those things. Is that, it seems pretty nebulous to me, honestly, as I'm reading it. Do you think that it's not?
It's tied to their impact fee study. So the study shows, based on their analysis, what that fee ought to be. So yes, they will be obligated to spend the funds that are collected from the impact fee on the items that are allowable, capital expenditures under that study.
And that are represented, needed for the growth that the impact fees are taking on. Right.
If I might again, Hal Dowdy, Fire Chief, Durango Fire Protection District. We actually have created a separate capital improvements fund so that it's very transparent and obvious where those funds are going. The impact fees that we currently get from the 4 development agreements that we've got, the Produce impact fees, Three Springs, Twin Buttes, Edgemont, and Purgatory are all going there, and you can see those. Those are available through going to our website to look up our budget. You can also see those on the required state sites. And the impact fees that would be generated from this ordinance will similarly go there. And we'll have a breakdown of what impact fees come from which different categories so that people could see the amount that are coming from the city, and in anticipation of the fact that we're hopeful that the county will come to the table on this as well. We would divide those so that you can see what the division is and where the impact fees are being generated from. Also, along the lines.
And spent. Yes.
And spent. And we're confining ourselves to even a more restrictive process than what the state ordinance would hold. It says that all fees generated by impact fee, or all revenue generated by impact fees, must go to something of a capital nature. So we could include things over $5,000 that last for more than 5 years, but we've restricted ourselves to only hold that these fees will go toward bricks and mortar projects, so new construction or expansion and remodeling of fire stations or the rolling stock. And those are the only 2 capital expenditure and budgets that we have in the impact fee study. So we're even more restrictive on ourselves than we're required to be by the state.
Thank you.
And before we actually go to a motion, I just wanted to thank the chief and all of the board for your efforts, for coming back with us, for the thoroughness and getting us to bring this to a vote. So thank you, and I think I probably speak for the rest of the city council on this. We appreciate your role in the community and the importance.
Thanks very much. It's been an exercise in patience for me, but I understand that the process has to happen, and I appreciate your efforts at getting to this point as well. Thank you.
And in that vein, I'll make a motion that we pass.
It's 2019-23.
Yeah, the ordinance around ordinance 2019-23.
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Phillips, may we have a roll call?
Councilor Patine?
Yes.
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes.
Mayor Youssef.
Yes.
And since she didn't actually include the IGA, I'd like a separate motion on the IGA.
Okay, and an additional motion to approve the IGA with the fire impact fee in the fire district.
Second.
Further discussion? Ms. Phillips?
Counselor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Counselor Baxter?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bricky?
Yes.
Mayor Youssef.
Yes.
All right.
Right. Congratulations. That was step 2 in the process. All right.
2 more.
We'll get ready to move on to Amber. I'm assuming we might lose a few people in the audience with that transition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're moving on now to 13.1.1.
Okay.
Amber Blake.
So 13.1.1, if I can get this thing to pull up here, is, what is our ordinance number?
24.
Ordinance 2019-24. This ordinance is amending the Code of Ordinances for the City of Durango for the purposes of modifying sewer rates for residential, commercial, and industrial users of the wastewater system and clarifying the categories of users and declaring an effective date. So I'm going to have Jared come up. I know there's a question related to debt service, so he will be able to present that information to the council. Again, I wanted to just remind the council that in this ordinance, we are proposing here a 3% increase to the sewer rates as well as implementing the 1.15 differential. Jared.
Good evening, councilors. I'm Jared Biggs, the Assistant Utilities Director. And I'm passing around a document shared with you. You'll recognize some of it, maybe not some other portions, but it is another representation. One side is the operating ratios. I shared the operating ratios with all of you at the budget retreat, and there seemed to be some kind of questions about, well, what would this look like with some additional scenarios added on? And so I have added some of those scenarios on to hopefully answer some of those questions. So you see the operating ratio as I presented at the meeting, and then to the right are 2 scenarios that we are talking about tonight, and that we've written into these 2 ordinances we're considering. Right now we're considering sewer, so please refer to the top right green, appropriately green sewer projections. So you can see, and again, based on the old, the operating ratio, the longitudinal graph, I was considering the debt service with that dotted line that we had previously talked about. So I just continued with the dotted line because really that's the one that matters with us. We have debt service. We will have debt service. We can look at our other operating ratio minus without looking at debt service, but it doesn't really serve us well. So with that, you can see we've run the scenario at a 3%, which is what the rate study was built at. We ran that scenario at a 2%, a 1%, and a 0%. And you can see kind of how the lines diverge and begin to kind of creep below where we want to be in an operating ratio. And so, again, the 3% over time was metered out, and the rate study looked at that to try and carry us forward in a sustainable way where we can cover our debt service, we can cover our operations, and we can cover the capital we need to continue to invest in our sewer infrastructure. On the other side, if you flip it over, I ran the rate covenants as was requested as well. And again, those rate covenants require us to have 110% of debt service revenue and our ability to pay our bills, right? We have to be able to pay our bills and generate enough money to cover 110%. So you can see those ratios at 3%, 2%, 1%, and 0%. And you'll say, well, Jared, we could cover our rate covenants at 2% increases, right? So why aren't we doing 2%? And that is because these rate covenants don't really consider our ongoing capital needs. They consider us paying our debt and operating our infrastructure, not necessarily reinvestment. So that's the difference between that percentage point. And then below that, I just provided you all, based on the currently written ordinances in front of us tonight, what the average user, both on a commercial and a residential scenario, would have. And so with the sewer rate, our average residential user in the city of Durango, within the city limits, would see a $4.14 increase. And our average residential outside of city user, and again, this is changing that 1.15, or that differential from 2 to 1.15, their average residential bill goes down by $43.92. So a pretty significant deduction. Commercial, a similar scenario. Average commercial user will pay $28.32 more for their sewer bill, and the commercial user outside of city limits will pay $438.99 less per month. Any questions? I'm happy to answer. Otherwise,
So this includes your request for the capital projects this year, which includes a $500,000, 50% portion toward a new garage, correct?
yes, the rates would generate enough money. Again, regardless of whether you guys approve the back to garage or not, we would be asking for the 3% to continue to be able to generate capital revenue to address projects moving into the future.
I don't have the budget numbers in front of me. It was too heavy to bring that book. How much is the reserve account right now in the sewer?
Approximately $4 million, maybe 4.1. And with that, you have to, if you look at what is in the budget pages, particularly budget page 29, where it's a summary of fund balances, that says there is $10 million of fund balance within the sewer fund, but a large sum of that is restricted because that is cash being held aside for payment of the wastewater treatment plant. So I think we have approximately $4 million in unrestricted reserves, so to speak. That meets what we tend to have as a 25% fund operating reserve, and some ability to cover some depreciating expenses.
Well, the city had that same amount in its general fund. So you have, basically you have $4 million, and I haven't seen a plan for how you anticipate spending that in the next 2 or 3 years.
We do have in our, so we have taken our schedule. We have put together our schedule of water and sewer projects that we intend to complete, right? And we shared that at the council retreat. But we did provide, as part of the budget, also, I believe at the budget retreat, we shared the 5-year capital plan, which included, the biggest item is an ongoing expense to pay for slip lining. I think Amber pointed that out in the budget presentation we had tonight. We're singing that to the tune of $1.2 million a year of slip lining projects. And then we have a few other items, I'm not thinking about them off the top of my head, for ongoing expenditures, but.
So maybe still a $2.5 million reserve that's not identified for future projects. If you add the $1.5 million and the, maybe $2 million that's going to be carried, plus any increase that this budget would be providing.
Right. Any other questions?
All right, so I'm reading this correctly then. at the 3% sewer rate based on these operating ratios, you're barely staying above the line. And anything else lower than that, the council doesn't approve those rate increases on the annual cost of services basis, cost of doing business basis, then it starts to drop. And we would eat into the capital reserves.
I would say that's accurate. We will continue to be subject to increased costs, right? That's what drives this delta between 3% additional revenue is the 3% of additional expenditure. Myself and Levi both work every day to try and make sure we're keeping things in budget, keeping things as financially tight as is feasible. But again, the rate study built in particular escalators on their rate assumptions, on their cost assumptions over time. And this is the trend we see is 3% is kind of what we need to keep up.
Yeah, and I think you've asked for clarity on, we all understand that you inherited a capital projects list that had blown out of proportion pretty quickly. You guys inherited that within the last couple of years, and you're working on that backlog. I think we're all expecting to see, further clarity on that, irrespective of that on a go forward. I mean, you're going to see those questions again next year for sure.
So Jared, with a 3% rate increase, how much does the reserve increase?
I believe in the current year, again, I'm kind of speaking off the cuff here. I believe if the current CIPs are all funded, I believe our increase is actually relatively minimal because of the adjustments we're receiving. I mean, in the 2020 year, the increased revenue is not as significant because we're taking a pretty significant reduction based on those out-of-city consumers.
Right, for 2020, but you've projected this out through 2025. So,
right.
So what would the reserve balance be at the end of 2025 with this projection of rate increase?
I can't give you that with any certainty.
Well, what I'm asking about, I guess, is that reserve balance increasing every year, or is it remaining the same?
It is a relatively constant dollar value. We are, when I built this thing out, it is, we go a couple of years, we have a large capital item that spends that money down. So I think we're staying around the $4 or $5 million fund balance level. Again, maintaining that 2.2 million in an operating balance, and then the remainder kind of building up a capital bankroll and then spending that capital.
Right. So you're pretty certain that that's remaining at about a 2.2 reserve all the way along.
2.2 is our operating reserve.
Okay.
And then another, 1 to 3 million available for capital expenditures.
And you're not expecting that to increase over the next 5 years?
With, again, if we implement 3% every year like clockwork, no.
Okay.
According to the study, it stays pretty flat. You don't gain much.
So I have two questions as well. The study on the page that looks like this, does that reflect the budget that you revised? It was different from the budget you presented to us that you recognized had higher figures because you were worried about us appropriating in time. So does this reflect the reduced budget is one? And also on your, the sewer contribution to the administration building, again, it's my understanding that the renewable energy components were removed from that building. And is there any plan as a part of this fund balance to actually bring that back to make it a more sustainable building that the city can hold up as an example of our commitment to a more resilient community and leadership with how we design our buildings?
I'll try and take both of those. So the reduced budget component is It does not take into consideration the reduced budget.
So this is on the old budget.
Right. It's actually on what we provided Ref Telus. We built, I used 2020 as a baseline year. And again, that's because they've already done the projections, they've baked in a number of other assumptions, and moved that
So
forward.
this would look better if you actually used the current budget that you've just worked through the interim city manager on.
Slightly, yes.
Sure, but it would look better.
Yeah, we would see that 2019 number that is there potentially come up a little bit, as well as the 2020. So we may not dip below that level.
So we're not looking at apples to apples necessarily in this. I mean, you've got new information and we haven't updated it.
Right.
And then what about the intent to actually make our administration building more green?
So the lead was removed in our value engineering exercise when the building came in over budget. We have tallied what that lead, what obtaining those 64 lead points was going to cost us in that. I think that was to the tune of $822,000 in order to directly attain the points that we were trying to attain. So what we did was we said, okay, we can pull these, but we still want high quality insulation that is going to give us high R values. We want a high performing HVAC system, and a number of other aspects. And we also kept the electrical loops in the building and the space to put photovoltaic onto that building in a relatively seamless way. We have been working with Imogen and our ESCO company, McKinstry, to potentially identify how we might, again, add those back in a way where we can get that through that ESCO agreement and pay for it that way. But again, we looked at the costs, we looked at the benefits. We were going to save, I think when I talked with Greg earlier today, somewhere on the order of $15,000 a year in energy costs. And that's not a firm value because we've never actually operated the building. We don't expect, so the payback of $15,000 to pay back the $822,000 was a pretty long haul. And we decided we can hopefully build in other items as we move ahead with ESCO contracting and other operations.
So tomorrow, I'm very much looking forward to the tour of the garage where the current Vector is kept, and at the tune of $1 million for a proposed CIP project. And the argument was it would be more convenient for the staff, and it would reduce their drive time minimally. And Councilor Baxter asked, what's the return on the $1 million investment in time saved? I look at that, I say, there's a request for $1 million, and I'm eager to see it tomorrow, so I have a better understanding of the rationale for that. But I look at it in the context of removing energy efficiencies that, you don't know what the savings are and making those judgments. And so, you made a trade-off, and I don't quite understand the value of your trade-off in the sense of why ask for $1 million here on a project that's already over budget and yet remove this component from something that the committee and previous city councils had made a commitment to more green buildings.
If I might add, I think what you described were components, energy-saving components that are being incorporated in this building. We're simply not getting a plaque.
What about
and
the
I
solar?
can say, if you want the plaque, you will restart the design
No.
process from day one, because that's when it starts and before. So whatever's on paper and whatever we paid for design work right now will delay this building for another year. And then that was what the increasing cost that we're incurring was unanticipated. Is the cost of construction costs that went up over the last year because we didn't get it done a year ago. So,
And are you maximizing your solar energy capacity on that building?
Maximizing solar energy capacity.
Yeah, so,
on
solar
the-
panels and things like that on that building?
It had been designed that way, and we did not change the exterior facade of that building at all.
But is it maximizing the capacity?
Well, I guess I can't speak to maximizing that capacity. It's a relatively non-ideal space anyway. If you go down there right now in the afternoon, Smelter Mountain's throwing a lot of shade. You know, there were always some questions about, is it the optimal place for it? You know, and it really wasn't. But we still want to look at ways we can make it more efficient. You know, we still want to look at ways we can continue to advance energy efficiency like we've done with the micro turbines that are operating. You know, and we plan to do all of those things through energy service contracting moving ahead.
So if I can ask you, you talk about McKinstry and the evaluation that the city is embarking for every building throughout the city for utilization of solar and other energy saving techniques via McKinstry and potential utilization of the energy services contract. I mean, we're going to get that information back, and as you said, we're plugged and ready if that study says that's the place to invest in solar collectors.
And so for that part, we engaged and got a survey last year of what floating solar on the reservoir might do, and that you know, we're looking at options. It's not like we're simply abandoning renewable goals by any means, but we are also provided a budget that we had to meet, and we decided this method to meet that.
I think we're getting off focus a little bit from the rate request.
Wondering if we might be able to have a motion.
Are we?
Unless there's any further discussion for Jared. It's getting late.
Well, I would make a motion to adopt the ordinance amending section 25-114 of chapter 25 of the Code and Ordinances of the City of Durango for purpose of modifying sewer rates for residential, commercial, and industrial users of the wastewater system.
I'll second.
And that is ordinance 2019-24.
I'll second again.
I have discussion.
Okay.
This is a one-time increase. It'll have to be approved again next year.
Yeah. Yes.
So I'd also like to comment that I'd really like to see a planned use of some of that reserve, and looking forward to the renewable energy component that was removed for whatever reasons. Not that I'm talking about having it be LEED certified, but I want to make certain that we can say to the public that was here tonight that we are doing our best to make certain that every building we build is as efficient as possible, not that we're retrofitting it after the fact. So that's a concern I have, and particularly wanting to see those kind of goals incorporated into the future capital projects.
Further discussion from council?
I just want to mention that it's being designed to the new building code and the International Energy Code, which is a significant upgrade over any other facilities we've ever constructed in the city of Durango.
I don't think we should leave people with the impression that it's not a highly efficient structure either. I think that it's a super common practice in construction these days not to go for the LEED certification, but to still implement all of the componentry that LEED might ensue. So, because it's too expensive, and so value engineering $800 and some thousand out of that is a good use of public funds. So.
Yeah, and I agree. I just think it needs to be communicated to the public that you got everything you would have gotten without the plaque, if that is truly the case.
Okay. Ms. Phillips, may we have a roll call?
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bricky?
Yes.
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Youssef?
Yes. Moving on to 13.1.2.
All right, so 13.1.2. Find my agenda to go again. So this would be 25.
Correct.
Ordinance O 2019-25 is an ordinance to amend the portions of the sections of 25-30 of Chapter 25 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Durango for purposes of amending the rates for outside city users and clarifying rates for irrigation accounts and declaring an effective date. So this is the water rates discussion. Based on previous discussions that we had, you'll see that this ordinance has a 0% increase to water rates for both residential and commercial users and implements the 1.15 differential.
Questions from council? Thoughts?
I have no questions.
I would say it's a departure from the rates and study, rate study that we did, which previous councils agreed with in anticipation that we'd never have to tear the Band-Aid off of and impact users with an increase like what we had to do 3 or 4 years ago. So this is a reprieve, a 1-year reprieve is what I heard watching testimony from the council session that I did miss while I was in Spain. So I respect your discussion, and if this is the way you want to go for a 1-year period, I would be supportive of it. But I think we have to understand that this is not anything that is sustainable in the long term, and we need to really consider this next year at this time it will be a rate increase.
So the question I have is, what is the debt service that the water rates are supporting, given this graph right here? It says it's, Jared?
What is the debt service being supported? So the divergence between the dotted line and the
Well, you say that there's debt service included in the water fund operating ratio. What debt service is included in the water fund operating ratio?
That is the debt service we are paying to the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority for our shares in Lake Night Horse that we issued the bonds for in 2012, I believe.
And they expire in?
I think that will be 2022 or maybe 24.
Okay. And then I also wanted to observe that at a 0% rate increase, that does keep us at the 110% coverage. So that keeps us within the guidelines.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'd like to add that I think the challenge that put forward to the Water Enterprise Fund was to bring down that capital improvement project. I recognize with the completion of the building, there'll be some of that, but there's still a fair amount. I'd like to note that there's also a capital improvement project of $920,000 for a fund that, talks about a Water Ridge water treatment facility as being a component, Water Basin Ridge, I've got Ridges Basin Water Treatment Facility, that's a component of that, which has not been approved. So that's a $920,000 expenditure being carried forward in the capital improvement project with, I think, a completion date right now of 2023 when I looked at your sheet. So I appreciate that. I also, when we went forward, I do want to make a note that on both the sewer and the water, there was the discussion that you would be able to create the bill so that it informs citizens of what their dollars are being used for, particularly on the sewer to address debt service. So,
well, yeah, it was even more intensively discussed upon the water bill in the case that we do approve an expansion of water treatment capabilities.
Right. So this would, I have no other further questions. I'm happy to close my end of discussion. I'm actually happy to make a movement if we're ready.
I'm ready.
What's the number?
2019-25.
I move that we vote or approve 2019-25, which will involve a 0% increase. It will increase the water fee for external to 1.15. And what is the comment on irrigation?
Just defines the definition of irrigation user. What's in the code before?
Defines the definition for irrigation users.
Second.
Further discussion from council?
I would just note that I'll be voting no because I think I agree with what Dean said earlier. This is not intended to be an optional thing. The costs go up every year by at least 2%. So we should be increasing this rate. and we're doing a disservice to our community not to do it, so.
Further discussion from council? Ms. Phillips, may we have a roll call?
Counselor Baxter?
Yes.
Counselor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
No.
Mayor Houston?
Yes. Moving on to 13.1.3, interim city manager reports, city status update.
So I just have a very brief update with a couple of announcements. There will be a Parks and Recreation Advisory Board on November 20th at 5 p.m. This will be start out with a joint board meeting between Parks and Recreation, Natural Lands, and Multimodal to discuss a e-bike pilot program on natural surface trails, and that will be at the Rec Center. That's at 5 p.m. and that will be followed by the regular Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting starting at 6. On November 11th, we'll have the Veterans Day Parade. So next Monday is it's a federal holiday, and the city offices will be closed. And then I just wanted to mention that for the parade, there will be road closures on the 500 block of Main all the way to 12th, and those closures will happen between 9:15 and 12.
Let me go back to the Parks and Rec meeting. Did I hear you say that on the 20th would be the joint board meeting and the standard Parks and Rec board meeting? Because it would have been on the 13th.
Did I get the date wrong?
No. I just may not have gotten the update.
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
I believe it's the following week. It's after the multimodal advisory board at 4. I believe the joint meeting is at 5 on the...
Yes, but then I thought she said that on the 20th, the Parks and Rec regular board meeting was happening at 6.
She did say that.
That's what was announced in our ET meeting this morning.
Okay, so the board meeting that would normally be
Can
on
we
the...
get a confirmation on that?
Yeah.
Right, because normally it's...
Study session with regular meeting at 6 p.m. We'll give you a confirmation, but that's what was announced at our executive team meeting this morning.
Great, actually.
Yeah, it would normally be on the 13th.
Right.
Yeah, okay, so you'll confirm with that tomorrow?
It's the Natural Lands. Is the Natural Lands Advisory Board meeting on Wednesday?
No, they're on Mondays.
They're on Mondays.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll confirm with Kathy.
Thank you.
But there is the Joint Advisory Board meeting on the 20th at 5.
All right.
For e-bikes, and I know we have a good contingent of our population interested in that.
Yes.
Parking revenues at the airport are up 6% year over year. And we had the record month of revenues for parking at the airport with $148,000 this past month. And Tony and his team, I just wanted to brag on them a little bit, have been working diligently over the past year to get precision GPS on runway 21. So for the average person, this means absolutely nothing and you don't care. But if you fly, you really do. Because the runway 21 is the runway that is into the headwind. And so when we don't have great visibility in the winter specifically, that is one of the reasons that there are delayed or diverted flights. And so this precision GPS went live today. And so we're hoping that there will be some positive impacts with reduced number of diverted flights or flight cancellations in the future. So that is some great news for all the traveling public out there. And we will see you next week for our next study session. That's what I got.
Thank you. Okay, council reports in action.
I have one. I attended, I guess, 2 weeks ago. It seems like 100 years ago, but 2 weeks ago when I was a little more functional, I attended the local first effort, which is around the Southwest Health Alliance. And this is, it was a discussion just for elected officials. So we had folks from several counties and the county commission, and I represented the city there. And we have an opportunity to really come together and look at our purchasing power if we, on health insurance, if we come together as a larger group. So I asked, I said, the city self-insures, how would that impact us? And I don't have all of the details, but they said this group, it's called PICA Health Alliance. They worked with Granby, the county there, and they self-insured, and they said, you don't have to change anything about your policies, your employee benefits, but you, by helping buy in and increasing the numbers, they actually resulted in a $500,000 savings in their plan. Yeah, I know. So I thought, if that's what you can get there, what can we get in Durango? So this group has an aggressive plan of trying to put together a plan so that by next September, October, if we came together as a group, we might know what it would entail. Though in January, they'll be seeking letters of intent. It doesn't commit anyone, but it says, we're interested in pursuing this. If the numbers pencil out, we might consider it, and we have this number of employees to add to the group. So what I'd like to ask is that we actually have a study session where they come and present and give a deeper dive in. They did it to us as elected officials, but I was only one. And we could either do it with them from the phone or here in person, and take us through what would be the potential benefits, the risks that right now seem minimal, but I imagine you all would have other questions. And so I look at it and I say, if we can save that kind of money, again, that could be helpful with going into the general fund. It could, it can be used somewhere, I think. And so I do want to encourage us to try to do that so that we're informed before too late into early January, so that we can decide whether or not we want to pursue this letter of intent.
And actually, it would benefit each department because they're allocated insurance costs based upon their employees. So it would be spread across the entire organization.
Yeah, I think.
Good suggestion.
I don't see a risk of exploring it. I actually think it might be negligent not to.
Sure.
So we'll get that for the study session calendar. And then when Barbara had mentioned this to me, I recommended that we have our benefits broker Hayes come for that study session as well, in case there are any items that are different between us and, you said Granby?
I think it was Granby, yes.
So if there's some differences between what they currently had or the situation that they're in us, that will make it a more robust, well-rounded conversation.
Great. Any other council reports in action?
Go ahead.
I'm just going to replug that Saturday, Ready for 100, this is their words, not mine, Ready for 100 movement and Durango's future unfolding. Why Durango can lead the clean energy transition for electricity, transportation, and heating. It's a seminar next Saturday, and I'll be speaking for 5 minutes. They want to hear about what the city's doing. I don't know why I'm speaking for 5 minutes and the other speakers are speaking for 30, but
wow.
I think we'll condense it, but certainly the city has more than 5 minutes worth of discussion about what we're doing. And so that's what I'm trying to try to impart. And in a 5-minute period, I'm happy to only speak for 5 minutes. And I hope any of the councilors who are in town and want to hear about what we are doing would support me in that effort. And thank you.
I would if I was in town.
The other thing I want to mention is I did, since we talked last time, we had the CAST meeting in Aspen. Incredible, mostly issues related about climate change. And specifically, we got a debriefing on the Mountain Town 2030 Symposium, which was held in Park City about a month ago. And MT, Mountain Town 2030, stands for becoming carbon neutral, how mountain towns can become carbon neutral by the year 2030. Imogen, our sustainability coordinator, was in attendance there, and there is a sign-on to becoming carbon neutral by 2030, and it's in total, basically it's an easy sign-on for us because we've already committed to doing that. And it's a pretty major move amongst all the resort communities and recreation-based communities, and it will be held in Summit County next year. And I think it's a really good. It's an outgrowth of what Mayor White and I signed on to, the Colorado Climate Communities. Andy Bierman, who is the mayor of Park City, was in attendance and signed on at that time, and has since taken it to another level, and that's what we're experiencing now. And I hope that I can encourage you to allow the city to participate in this further. So.
Ken? So I mentioned last meeting that a couple of weeks ago I went to the Animas Valley Elementary School and talked to 2 different classes of 3rd graders, and they sent thank you notes that are just awesome. They're wonderful, and I wanted to say how much I mean, there were 30 thank you notes. It's incredible. I'm just showing a few of them. It's just was so cool, and here's another one. It's thank you for teaching us about government. Thank you for teaching us about water and fees. Thank you for this and that. It was awesome. So I want to thank them for acknowledging that. And the other thing I wanted to speak to very briefly is the 5G conversation that we've been having this evening. And our ability as a city to have a huge impact on the nation guidelines for how this works is fairly small. But the people who can make a huge difference are the state and federal government. And I would highly encourage that every person who's spoken about their concerns about 5G and has written about it, please, 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 make that effort to the state and federal governments, because they're the ones who are going to have the huge impact on what happens with this. So much more than we could ever do. So I would really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We might want to remind people, I guess, probably during public participation going forward. It's a good idea. Chris? Okay. Yeah.
Powwow this Saturday. Remember the student who came and spoke? There's the powwow this Saturday. I think it starts at 10 o'clock at the fairgrounds. And I also, since we won't be having another meeting before then, Mayor Pro Tem will also be speaking at the Day of Remembrance for LGBTQ,
right,
which will be, I think, the 17th in the evening at the
Saturday
UU.
at 3 o'clock.
So I think it's important that we recognize that day coming up as well.
And that reminded me of another event of Veterans Remembrance that's happening on Friday morning at the high school. So you can go to that. There's a breakfast as well as a event. So.
Okay, and I just wanted to let you know, neat event or neat program happening with the Creative Economy Commission, partnership with BID. Tim Walsworth presented at our last meeting, and the Creative District and the Creative Economy Commission to do storefront pop-ups. And so these empty storefronts,
nice.
They're trying to, before holidays, transform them into various art installations and light shows or whatever it might be. So it's a great example of a partnership between some entities, small dollar amount and big impact, I hope. I think hopefully they're looking at Animas Trading Company, the Wells Group space, and the old Joyful Nook, 640 Main.
Nice.
So that'll be kind of neat. And that's all I had. We did, Kevin, you want to briefly touch on the marijuana update? Just like 2 minutes. We are making progress with the marijuana hospitality update, and Kevin's been leading that, so he said he would just do briefly.
I'm just trying to figure out how many hours it's been.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, so we met with the stakeholders about 10 days ago, and we're going to actually have an internal staff meeting tomorrow, because a lot of the departments all are impacted by rulemaking that we'll have to establish some regulations, bring some policy concepts to you. And what we did have, though, is I suggested, when there was a suggestion of a study session last week, I was looking at the calendar going, I'm not sure when that's going to happen. I was looking after the new year, and there seemed to be a pretty big gasp by at least one of the stakeholders in the room. And an alternative to that is for staff to really just kind of synthesize some of the key points and bring it to you during a regular study session. And under new business, we can do it really quick. What we really need to talk about is whether there's buy-in to explore the regulations. And the stakeholders, there's a lot of business implications on the new state rules. So if we can get a informal, we're interested in moving this forward, then we will, in fact, do that. And then we can come back to you in the new year with some more substantive information, rather than just waiting until the new year to do that.
That's a good update. So the real message there too is that you'll bring it forward in the future in
Correct.
Under new business, but they are talking and they are making progress. I thought it was important to know. Future potential agenda items? Anybody?
Just the Southwest, because I think it will require, eventually it will require some kind of endorsement, or at least consensus. So I don't know if it's at a city council meeting or just at a study session.
Anybody else? I have two quick ones. Okay, I wanted to let everyone know that I received a call from Mark Katz, and he is requesting a study session in early January. He wants to get us council up to speed on the Durango Mesa project.
Awesome.
And so I just wanted to give you that update. That will be something we want to get on the calendar. And then number two is that I want to recognize that we have a really, really, really busy calendar for November. Today we had literally a triple header, and we have another double header coming in on the 19th, correct? And so going forward, I just want to suggest that I think in the new year, we have made tremendous strides. We've accomplished a lot. But going forward, I think we need to respect people's calendars and recognize that we have people who are working full-time jobs on this council. We have to be cognizant of that and be very careful with how we manage our calendar in the new year. So I just wanted to throw that out there as we're throwing more study sessions on the calendar, myself included with Mr. Katz. But I think that we just need to be really careful about that. I think we all agreed to November, but beyond that, I think we need to probably limit it to normal council meeting times.
My vote is yes. I vote yes.
I second that motion.
I figured.
I will remind you that we added next week an extra session to next week as well.
We did.
To
So we
do
have two double
the
headers.
search firm for the
So all of
city
November,
manager.
and that may, I mean, it's tough with the search firm, so.
Sorry, I wasn't in that meeting, so I was like, what's the session that I'm missing?
It's 3 hours of interviewing search firms.
So,
We'll get that on the
so
calendar.
we're gonna really work after November to try not to do these double headers anymore, and manage our calendar appropriately. So with that, I think we can adjourn the meeting, correct? Anything else? All right, meeting adjourned.